The weight of the wastelands. The winds swept through the cracked red canyons of the Earth's deserted badlands, carrying with them the dry, metallic scent of heated rock. Son Goku stood alone on a high plateau, his arms crossed over his chest. His orange gi snapped violently by the squalls generated purely by his own resting aura. He had spent the early morning hours pushing the boundaries of his instant transmission. Standard teleportation was simple. He locked onto a known Kai signature and folded the distance between point A and point B instantly. But lately, Goku had been experimenting with mid-combat microtransmissions. Short, instantaneous hops across mere inches of space to slip past an opponent's guard before their brain could register the physical movement. A little to the left, Goku muttered to himself, closing his eyes. Bub. He vanished, reappearing 3 inches to his left, dropping his center of gravity into a swift jab against the empty air. The pressure wave from his knuckles split a massive sandstone boulder 50 meters away in two. Bub. He vanished again, reappearing behind his own shadow, launching a rising knee strike. The sheer displacement of air caused the ground beneath him to crater downward into fine sand. Goku wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with his wristband, exhaling a hot cloud of steam. Man, keeping the Kai compressed while shifting like that really burns through energy fast. If I do this in Super Saiyan Blue, my body's gonna wear out before I even land a hit on someone like Vegeta. He rolled his shoulders and looked up at the sky. It was a crisp, clear afternoon. The sun hung high, casting long, sharp shadows across the canyons. Everything felt normal, the distant hum of wild beasts miles away, the rhythmic heartbeat of the planet, the subtle, flowing Kai of his friends scattered across the globe. Then, without a second of warning, the fabric of the sky shattered. It didn't explode with a roar or shatter like breaking ice. It was a silent, geometric tear. A straight line of brilliant, iridescent light sliced through the zenith of the atmosphere, spreading outward like ink on wet parchment. Within seconds, the blue vault of the sky cracked into thousands of triangular planes. Goku's smile faded immediately. Every hair on his arm stood on end. What the? He lowered his guard slightly and elevated his Kai, preparing to leap into the air, but as his feet left the ground, the physics of the world around him buckled. The red canyons didn't crumble, they multiplied. Goku looked down and saw his own reflection staring back at him from the air itself. Every square inch of space was transforming into a pristine, seamless mirror. Vegeta, Gohan, Goku shouted, reaching out with his sense of perception. He pushed his awareness outward, searching for any living soul. Usually the energy signatures of his family and friends shone like bright bonfires in his mind. But as his Kai sensing expanded, it hit a wall, not a barrier of energy, but a wall of echoes. His own Kai signature pinged back at him from millions of directions at once, flooding his mind with an overwhelming, deafening roar of his own power reflected endless times. Is this a technique? Goku growled, dropping into a wide combat stance. Hey, who's there? There was no voice in response, only the sound of his own breathing, amplified until it sounded like the rushing of a distant waterfall. The sky inverted. The ground beneath him dissolved into a void of dark, crystalline glass that stretched out into infinity. Floating thousands of feet above him, and simultaneously beneath him, were inverted, twisted versions of Earth. He saw the capsule building of Capsule Corp upside down, spun around like a toy in a glass marble. He saw the ocean turned into a vertical wall of frozen, unmoving water. Son Goku was no longer on Earth. He had been swallowed whole by the mirror dimension. Goku landed on the glass surface below. When his boots touched the ground, there was no impact sound, only a sharp, high-pitched tink that vibrated through his skeleton. He knelt down, extending his right hand to touch the floor. The glass was cool, perfectly smooth, and completely frictionless. Yet somehow he could stand on it without slipping. Looking down between his feet, he saw no dirt, no mantle, no core. Just an endless, bottomless abyss filled with floating geometric shapes, shifting stained glass windows of light, and infinite reflections of himself stretching into the dark below. Okay, Goku said softly, his voice echoing in a bizarre, unnatural pitch. This isn't magic like Babitti's, and it isn't a pocket dimension like the room of spirit and time. It feels like space is folded over itself. He stood up, shaking out his arms. Goku was never one to panic. To him, an impossible scenario was just a puzzle that needed a harder punch. Let's see how tough this place really is. Goku tightened his fists, pulling his elbows into his ribs. He inhaled deeply, drawing energy from his center, and let out a sharp cry. Bzzzt. A blinding torrent of golden Kai erupted from his body. The air roared as Goku transformed instantly into a Super Saiyan. His dark hair stood up, turning bright yellow, enveloped by a fiercely burning golden aura. The sheer heat of his power usually melted rock and kicked up mountain-sized dust storms. But here, the golden light hit the surrounding air and fractured into thousands of tiny multicolored beams, scattering across the glass landscape like light passing through a diamond. "Whoa, pretty," Goku chuckled despite himself. "Now let's try a small test." He raised his right pointer finger, concentrating a small, dense marble of golden Kai at the tip. It sparkled with pure kinetic force, enough energy to vaporize an entire city if let loose. "Fire in the hold." Goku flicked his finger, launching the Kai pellet straight toward a floating, inverted skyscraper hanging in the void a few hundred meters away. The beam shot out at hypersonic speed, but the instant it traveled 50 yards, it didn't travel in a straight line. The space around the beam bent sharply at a 90-degree angle. The beam hit an invisible plane in the middle of empty air, bounced off with a loud clang, snapped across two more invisible planes, and shot directly back at the back of Goku's head. Gah! Goku's Saiyan instincts flared. He snapped his head sideways, feeling the scorching heat of his own blast brush past his ear before he reached back, grabbed the tail end of the energy beam, and crushed it inside his fist with a loud crackle of sparks. He blinked, looking at his smoking glove, then up at the path the beam had taken. "It bounced," Goku murmured, his eyes narrowing in fascination. "It didn't hit a wall or a barrier. The space itself turned the blast around. It's like driving down a road, but the road bends itself back to where you started." He crouched low, his golden aura flaring brighter. "If beams don't work, let's try physical force." Goku leaped forward, aiming to punch the empty air where the beam had folded. He crossed 100 meters in a fraction of a millisecond, driving his right fist forward with enough velocity to shatter continents. Wham! His fist struck an invisible plane. The entire dimension shook. Massive, spider-webbing cracks of brilliant blue light spread across the air, radiating outward for miles. The sound was like 1,000 church bells ringing at once. For a single second, Goku thought he had broken through, but as he pulled his fist back, the space didn't shatter, it rebounded. The kinetic force of his own punch was reflected directly back into his arm with equal and opposite force. Boom! The reflected shockwave caught Goku right in the chest, sending him skidding backward across the glass floor for nearly half a mile before he dug his boots in and came to a stop, his breath catching in his throat. Gah, huff, huff. Goku rubbed his right forearm, which was numb and throbbing from the shockwave of his own attack. Man, that hit hard. It's like punching a trampoline made of iron. He stood back up, his golden aura flickering as he dropped out of Super Saiyan back into his base form. He needed to think, and wasting energy while figuring out the rules of this realm was an amateur mistake. Goku sat down cross-legged on the dark glass floor, resting his elbows on his knees and placing his chin in his hands. "All right," he reasoned aloud, his tone casual, almost conversational. "Physical hits reflect back at me. Energy blasts bounce around until they hit me from behind. Teleportation." He paused. He hadn't fully tested instant transmission yet. Goku brought 2 fingers to his forehead. He cleared his mind of combat, shutting down his eyes, and tried to home in on King Kai's planet. King Kai's realm was outside the normal universe, sitting high in the other world. If anything could be reached, it should be there. He focused. King Kai, come on, pick up. In his mind's eye, he saw the tiny green planet with its single house and bubblegum pink trees. He locked onto King Kai's distinct, nervous Kai signature. Gotcha, Goku smiled. He initiated the teleportation sequence. Pop! The world vanished into a white flash. Goku felt the familiar sensation of slipping into the interdimensional slipstream. But instead of popping out on King Kai's tiny grassy lawn, his feet landed back on the exact same polished glass floor. The only difference? He was now upside down, his feet stuck to what felt like the sky, looking down at the inverted floating city beneath him. "Oh, come on," Goku yelled, dropping his hands. "Even instant transmission." He let go of his magnetic hold on the plane above and fell through the air, flipping smoothly in mid-flight and landing back on his feet on the original floor. "It's not that I can't teleport," Goku realized, tapping his foot thoughtfully. "The space in this place is looping. Every path leads back inside the box. It's like being inside a mirror ball where every mirror reflects back inside." As Goku stood there analyzing his predicament, the atmosphere within the mirror dimension began to shift. The silence was broken by a strange, low hum, a harmonic metallic resonance that seemed to vibrate from the glass beneath his feet. The reflections scattered across the floor didn't match his movements anymore. Goku looked down. In the glass beneath his boots, his reflection wasn't sitting or standing in a combat stance. The reflection was wearing an old, torn orange gi with the turtle school kanji on the back, the gi he wore when he first fought Raditz and Nappa decades ago. Goku leaned down, staring into the floor. "Is that me from back then?" The reflection's eyes glowed with a cold, pale white light. Slowly, deliberately, the reflection raised its hand and pressed its palm against the underside of the glass plane. Tink! A thin, dark line of glass split open. The reflection began to push its way out of the mirror floor, stepping into reality right in front of Son Goku. The echo of the past. The creature that stepped out of the glass did not possess a pulse. It made no sound as its boots clicked against the obsidian plane, standing perfectly still in the dim, prismatic light of the mirror dimension. Goku stepped back half a pace, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight. The figure before him was an exact physical replica of himself during the Saiyan saga. The faded orange gi, the red undershirt, the black belt, and the wild, spiky hair. But where Goku's eyes were warm, bright, and filled with restless energy, the clone's eyes were completely featureless, glowing with a stagnant, pale blue light like frozen ice under moonlight. "Whoa," Goku muttered, his hands hovering near his waist in an instinctively loose guard. "You look like a ghost. Did this place make you out of my memories?" The mirror replica did not speak. It didn't exhale. Instead, it dropped seamlessly into Goku's old, classic turtle school stance. Knees bent low, right hand extended forward with fingers loosely curled, left hand pulled back against its ribcage. "Heh," Goku grinned, a spark of genuine excitement cutting through the eeriness of the moment. "At least your form is right. Let's see if you can fight like me too." Before Goku could complete his sentence, the clone vanished. There was no burst of displaced air, no sonic boom, no residual slipstream. The clone simply ceased to exist at its starting position and materialized directly in Goku's blind spot, launching a sharp, straight sidekick targeted directly at Goku's temple. Thwack! Goku threw his forearm up just in time to block the blow. The sheer kinetic impact vibrated down his arm, sending a shockwave rippling across the dark glass floor for hundreds of yards. The strength behind the kick wasn't just impressive. It was identical to Goku's own raw physical power from that era, but amplified by the strange, unnatural density of the mirror dimension. "Gah!" Goku skidded backward, his boots carving faint white lines into the unbreakable glass. The mirror clone gave Goku no time to reset. It lunged forward, executing a flawless, lightning-fast 5-hit combination. A left jab, a right hook to the ribs, an elbow strike aimed at the collarbone, a spinning back kick, and a swept low leg kick designed to break his balance. Goku parried every single strike, his palms moving in swift, fluid circles. Puff, 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 pop. Sparks of pale blue light flared with every impact as their fists collided. "You're fast," Goku yelled over the sound of the clashing strikes. "And you know my old habits, but I've learned a few new tricks since then." Goku dipped his shoulder under a sweeping right hook, slid inside the clone's guard, and brought a heavy palm strike directly into the center of the clone's chest. Boom! The force of the blow hit the clone like a battering ram. But instead of sending the copy flying across the realm, the clone's chest cracked like a sheet of tempered glass. Thin, glowing white fissures spread across its torso, spiderwebbing out toward its shoulders and jaw. Yet the clone didn't flinch, cry out, or lose its balance. It grabbed Goku's striking wrist with a grip like a vice. "What the?" Goku gasped. The clone raised its other hand, forming 2 fingers against its forehead. A sharp, piercing red light ignited at its fingertips, a technique Goku hadn't used in years, borrowed from Piccolo during their desperate battle against Raditz. The special beam cannon. "Hey, wait a second, that's not even my move," Goku barked. The clone fired at point-blank range. A spiraling drill of deadly pink-and-purple energy erupted from its fingers, aiming straight for Goku's throat. Goku didn't have time to dodge or pull back his trapped arm. He flared his Kai instantaneously, forcing a hard, concentrated dome of golden energy outward from his body in a microsecond burst. The explosive expansion of Super Saiyan energy shattered the clone's grip and deflected the spiral beam harmlessly upward toward the inverted sky, where it struck a floating mirror mountain and scattered into thousands of harmless, glittering shards of light. Goku landed 10 feet back, his golden hair blazing, his aura crackling with high-frequency energy. The clone stood motionless, its chest still covered in glowing, spiderweb cracks. Slowly, the cracks began to draw surrounding light out of the air, fusing back together until the mirror replica was once again perfectly intact. "Great," Goku sighed, adjusting his wristband. "It repairs itself, and it uses techniques I've seen or fought against, not just the ones I use." The hum vibrating through the mirror dimension grew louder, shifting from a low drone to a harsh, dissonant ring. Goku watched in real time as the ground around him began to bubble, not like lava, but like molten silver. From the surface of the dark glass, 3 more figures slowly emerged, stepping upward like men rising out of an elevator shaft. To his left stood a mirror clone dressed in the weighted blue undershirt and white boots of his Namek Saga fight against Frieza. To his right stood a clone glowing with the sharp, jagged golden aura of Super Saiyan 1 from the Cell games, its eyes burning with empty, pale blue light. Directly in front of him stood a third clone, larger, heavier, wrapped in the crimson, heat-haze glow of the Kaioken times 20. "4 of me," Goku said, his voice dropping into a serious, tactical tone. "All from different times, all locked in this place." This isn't just an illusion, Goku thought, his mind racing as he evaluated the situation. These things aren't using normal Kai, they're made of the dimension itself. When I hit them, the energy doesn't dissipate. It stays inside the mirror network and fixes them. The Kaioken clone roared, a strange, hollow, mechanical sound that lacked any human emotion, and surged forward. The air fractured around it as it crossed the distance in a fraction of a millisecond. It swung a heavy, Redor-infused overhead smash straight toward Goku's head. Goku didn't try to block. He knew the Kaioken's kinetic weight would force him onto the defensive. He used his micro-instant transmission, vanishing in a tiny pop and reappearing above the clone's head. He brought both hands together in a double-axe handle drop hammer, slamming his hands downward into the clone's neck. Crack! The Kaioken clone crashed into the glass floor, creating a massive crater of fractured light. But before Goku could land, the Super Saiyan Cell Games clone leaped into the air behind him, its hands pulled back to its side, forming a familiar blue sphere of concentrated destruction. Kazemi! "Oh, come on," Goku yelled, twisting his body in midair. "Using my own ultimate move against me." "Ha-emi," the mirror clone chanted, its hollow voice echoing from everywhere at once. Goku knew that blocking a full-powered Kamehameha in this enclosed, reflective space would be suicidal. If the blast bounced off the dimensional walls, It would create an endless chain reaction of energy bouncing in every direction until the entire quadrant was atomized. Goku pulled his hands back to his own waist, charging his own counterblast in a split second. Ka-zimi, ha-imi, ha. Two identical streams of bright blue energy erupted across the void, colliding midway between the two Saiyans. Kaboom! The collision created a blinding sun of raw force. The energy didn't disperse outward into smoke and debris. Instead, the mirror dimension absorbed the explosive pressure, transforming the energy into millions of razor-sharp glass needles that rained down across the entire battlefield. Goku whipped his golden aura around himself like a shield, the glass needles ricocheting off his Saiyan barrier with a deafening ping-ping-ping-ping-ping. Through the storm of light and needles, the Namek Saga clone broke through at top speed, grabbing Goku by his shoulders and driving its knee hard into Goku's stomach. G-U-G-H-H. Goku coughed up a spit of air as the blunt force knocked the breath from his lungs. Before he could recover, the Kaioken clone recovered from the crater below, jumping up and delivering a vicious, rising uppercut straight into Goku's chin. Goku was launched upward into the air, spinning out of control toward the ceiling of inverted skyscrapers. Goku flipped midair, catching himself on the glass surface of an inverted building balcony. He panted heavily, wiping a line of sweat from his chin. His Super Saiyan aura flickered, stabilizing into a steady, controlled hum. They don't get tired, Goku analyzed, watching the four mirror clones leap up from the floor below, landing gracefully on nearby inverted structures around him. They don. Lose energy, and every time I hit them with normal Kai, it just bounces around and powers the realm up. He closed his eyes for a short second, breathing in the cold, thin air of the realm. To beat something that doesn't have a body, I can't treat them like normal fighters. I have to hit them with something that doesn't just smash things. I need something that alters energy itself. Goku opened his eyes. The pale blue pupil-less glare of the four mirror clones reflected in his dark, determined eyes. He dropped his arms to his side. The golden Super Saiyan aura vanished completely. The air went deathly quiet. Let's see how your mirror glass handles God Kai. Goku took a slow, deep breath. His posture relaxed entirely, his shoulders dropping, his hands opening loose and flexible. He turned his focus inward, sinking deep past his physical muscles, past his normal Saiyan energy reserves, reaching for the tiny, scorching flame of divine energy tucked deep within his soul. The temperature around Goku dropped instantly. The jagged, chaotic glass needles floating in the air froze in place. WOSH. A smooth, calm, brilliant red aura ignited around Goku's body. His hair changed from black to a deep, shimmering magenta red. His body grew slightly leaner, his posture more refined, and his eyes shifted to a calm, deep ruby hue. Super Saiyan God. The four mirror clones paused for the first time. Their pale light flickered erratically, as if unable to process or calculate the nature of the energy now radiating from Son Goku. God Kai didn't leak out into the surrounding environment. It was completely contained within his body, dense, refined, and calm. You guys can copy my old moves, Goku said, his voice dropping into a soft, cool register. But God Kai isn't just about power, it's about control. The Kaioken clone surged forward first, screaming its hollow roar as it threw a punch packed with enough kinetic force to split a planetoid. Goku didn't move until the fist was a millimeter from his nose. With effortless grace, Goku didn't block or duck. He simply rotated his torso by a fraction of an inch, letting the clone's fist slip past his ear. As the clone overextended, Goku tapped the side of the clone's neck with a single finger infused with concentrated God Kai. Ping! A shockwave of deep red, divine energy rippled through the clone's body. Unlike the physical punches from earlier, the God Kai didn't shatter the glass. It vibrated through the mirror structure at a frequency the realm couldn't reflect. The Kaioken clone stiffened instantly. The red aura around it turned dark gray, and with a soft sound like a falling feather, the entire clone dissolved into a cloud of harmless, fine silver dust. Goku looked at his hand, then at the remaining 3 clones, a cool smile returning to his face. "Found your weakness," Goku said smoothly. "You can reflect force, but you can't reflect divine energy." The 3 remaining mirror clones backed away simultaneously, their ice-blue eyes flashing rapidly, as the geometry of the realm around them began to twist violently in response to the presence of God Kai. The real battle for the mirror dimension was just beginning. The echo chamber of Nemesis. The silver dust of the disintegrated Kaioken clone hung suspended in the air like ambient starlight, refusing to settle onto the frictionless floor. Goku stood poised in his Super Saiyan God form, the vibrant magenta aura wrapping around his frame like a tranquil sun flare. His ruby-red eyes flicked across the inverted cityscape, monitoring the 3 remaining mirror duplicates. They didn't charge. The God Kai vibrating through Goku's nervous system had altered the immediate physics around his body. Where his earlier Super Saiyan transformations had caused violent spatial fractures and reflective ping-ponging of kinetic force, the divine energy operated on a higher harmonic plane. It was dense, quiet, and contained. The surrounding glass structures did not shatter. Instead, they hummed in reluctant resonance, as if reality itself was attempting to tune its geometry to match Goku's divine frequency. "So that's how it is," Goku murmured, his voice carrying a cool, calm resonance. "You guys feed on brute force. When I push, you push back with the exact same weight, but God Kai doesn't push space. It flows through it." The 3 remaining Goku clones, the Saiyan Saga version, the Namek Saga version, and the Super Saiyan Cell Games version, stepped backward in absolute unison. Their movements were no longer human. They were synchronization errors in a grand calculation. They didn't retreat out of fear, but rather to merge. Tink, tink, crack. The 3 duplicates stepped into one another, their silhouettes overlapping like double-exposed film. The glass floor beneath their feet dissolved into a dark pool of mercury. As they fused, the light around them inverted. The pale blue glow that had filled their featureless eyes flared into a violent, blood-red hue. The merged silhouette expanded, its shoulders broadening, its stature warping. The spiky Saiyan hair smoothed down into a solid, polished dome. The orange gi melted into a sleek, ivory skin texture marked by polished purple chest plates and shoulder guards. Goku's eyebrows twitched. No way. The figure that stepped out of the dark mercury pool was not another version of himself. It was a flawless, crystalline replica of final form Frieza. Specifically, as he had looked on the dying surface of planet Namek, his muscles bulging at 100% maximum capacity, veins throbbing like thick cables beneath his polished white hide. Ho 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 ho. A voice echoed throughout the realm. It didn't come from the mouth of the Frieza clone. The clone had no mouth, its lower face a smooth sheet of seamless white glass. The voice was synthesized by the dimension itself, pulling the auditory memory directly from the neural pathways of Goku's brain. "Did you really think you could escape your past, Super Saiyan?" The hollow voice echoed, bouncing off the inverted glass skyscrapers above. "Every nightmare, every genocide, every drop of blood you have ever spilt or witnessed. This realm remembers it all." Before the sound of the final word finished echoing, the air behind Goku split open. A massive green and black insected frame dropped from a tier in the sky, landing with a heavy, deafening thud that shook the entire quadrant. Perfect Cell pulled himself upright, his golden aura crackling with dark red bioelectricity. Beside him, the space distorted again, bubbling like boiling pitch as a pink, gelatinous horror coalesced into the form of Kid Buu, its arms flailing wildly as it let out a silent, terrifying scream of pure, unbridled malice. Goku took a slow step back, dropping his center of gravity into a wider stance. "Frieza, Cell, Buu," Goku breathed out a cloud of red steam. "You didn't just pull my old forms, you're searching my mind for every major fight I've ever had. We are the sum of your struggle," the synthesized voice echoed from all 3 monsters at once. "You cannot defeat that which made you." Without a single moment of wind-up, the Frieza clone struck. It didn't glide or dash across the glass floor. It manipulated the geometry of the mirror dimension to shorten the distance. 1 millisecond, Frieza was 50 meters away. The next, his thick, crystalline tail was whipping through the air like a steel beam toward Goku's throat. Thwack! Goku caught the tail with his bare left hand. The kinetic energy was immense, enough to snap a continent in half. But Goku's God Kai absorbed the initial shock, turning the strike into a heavy thud. However, the tail wasn't just physical. The moment Goku touched it, the tail turned into a liquid mirror, flowing over Goku's forearm like molten silver and instantly hardening into a cuff of unbreakable glass. Gah! Goku yanked his arm back, but his wrist was anchored to the space around Frieza's tail. Gotcha! Cell's synthesized voice roared from above. The Cell clone descended like a meteor, its legs tucked into a flying double-knee strike aimed straight for Goku's chest. Goku couldn't pull his trapped left arm free, so he raised his right hand, channeling a concentrated burst of Super Saiyan God Kai directly into his palm. God Heat Flash. A searing beam of crimson energy erupted from Goku's palm at point-blank range, hitting Cell full in the chest. Boom! The explosion sent shockwaves of red and gold light cascading across the quadrant. But because they were in the mirror dimension, the explosive energy didn't expand outward into open space. It hit an invisible wall 10 yards out, compressed into a super-dense ring of thermal energy, and rebounded directly back onto Goku and his attackers. The searing heat washed over Goku, scorching his gi and tearing through his shoulder guards. The Frieza clone, immune to the reflected heat of its own realm, used the distraction to swing its free fist, landing a brutal, glass-shattering left hook into Goku's ribs. Crack! Goku felt a sharp, white-hot pain shoot through his side. 2 of his ribs fractured under the force. The impact severed his grip on the tail, sending him spinning through the air across the dark floor. He crashed heavily, skidding on his back for hundreds of yards, leaving a trail of crimson divine blood against the dark glass surface. Huff! Goku pushed himself up onto his hands and knees, wiping a smear of blood from his lip with the back of his hand. His red aura flickered, unstable for a brief second before snapping back into place. Man! Fighting 3 boss-level guys at once while the environment works against me. This really takes me back. Despite the broken ribs and the burning pain in his side, a wide, genuine grin spread across Goku's face. His Saiyan blood was singing. The sheer absurdity of the handicap, the fact that every burst of force he used came back to bite him, was forcing his mind to think in entirely new ways. Physical force gets reflected, Goku analyzed quickly, his eyes tracking Kid Buu, who was currently dancing wildly in place, its pink body distorting like a funhouse mirror. Beam attacks compress and bounce back as thermal shockwaves, and if I touch them directly, they use the glass space to trap my limbs. Cell stepped forward out of the smoke of the God Heat Flash. The massive hole in its chest was already closing, filled in by liquid silver glass that hardened into polished green chitin within seconds. You are fading, Saiyan, Cell spoke, its voice echoing with the combined tones of every villain Goku had ever slain. In this realm, entropy does not exist for us. Every calorie of energy you expend remains in the system, fueling our restoration. You are fighting an ocean with a bucket. Maybe, Goku said, slowly rising to his feet and rolling his hurt shoulder. But an ocean still has a bottom. I just gotta find where yours is. Kid Buu didn't wait for a tactical discussion. The pink terror stretched its arms out, not 5 feet, not 10 feet, but across 2 miles of folded space. Its giant glass-like fists emerged out of 2 separate spatial portals directly behind Goku's head, coming together in a thunderous double-palm clap designed to crush his skull like a walnut. Pop! Goku used a microburst of instant transmission, dropping 6 inches lower. The massive fists collided with a deafening clang, the shockwave blasting the air flat around them. While still squatting low, Goku drove his right heel upward in a reverse flash kick, aiming directly for the spatial portal Kid Buu's arm had emerged from. Instead of hitting the arm, his heel struck the edge of the portal itself. Ping! The divine god Kai running through Goku's boot interfered with the spatial fold. The portal collapsed in on itself like a closing eyelid, severing Kid Buu's extended arm at the elbow. KYAH! Kid Buu let out a high-pitched, screeching roar from across the field as its severed arm turned into harmless pink glass shards on the floor. Aha! Goku's eyes lit up. I don't need to break you guys, I just need to break the connections you're using to move around. Arrogant ape! Frieza's clone shouted. The ivory monster raised both hands above its head, creating two glowing crimson discs of energy that began to spin with terrifying velocity. The death saucers! Frieza threw his hands forward. The two razor-sharp discs flew toward Goku, but they didn't travel in a straight line. They entered the reflective planes of the mirror dimension, multiplying exponentially. 2 discs became 4, 4 became 16, 16 became 64. Within seconds, a swirling storm of hundreds of red, razor-sharp energy saws filled the sky, all humming at frequencies capable of cutting through planetary cores. Let's see you dodge space itself, Cell roared, sweeping his hands wide to trigger a massive telekinetic field, pinning Goku's body to the floor with billions of tons of artificial gravity. Goku felt his knees buckle under the sudden, crushing weight. The floor beneath him didn't break. It reinforced itself, locking his boots in place as the sky rained down a vortex of red energy saws. Heavy, Goku grunted, his teeth grinding together as he forced his head up to watch the oncoming storm of death saucers. Really heavy. He couldn't dodge. He couldn't block with physical strength. And if he fired a full-power aura blast, the reflected shockwave would crush his fractured ribs completely. Goku lowered his head and closed his eyes. He shut down his physical senses, the sound of the humming saws, the sight of the descending death, the feeling of the crushing gravity on his shoulders. He stopped looking at the mirror dimension as a physical battlefield filled with walls, floors, and enemies. He began to look at it as a stream of energy. In his mind's eye, everything in the mirror dimension was connected by thin, invisible threads of light, vibrational lines holding the glass reality together. Cell's gravity was a thread pull from above. Frieza's discs were threads spinning through the spatial folds. Kid Buu was a knot of chaotic energy tied directly to the floor. If I can't break the thread, Goku thought, drawing his deep, divine breath inward until his chest expanded to its absolute limit. I just gotta slip through the gaps. WOSH. The brilliant red aura of Super Saiyan God didn't flare outward. It collapsed inward, shrinking until it formed a paper-thin layer of shimmering crimson light skin-tight against Goku's gi and skin. Super Saiyan God, starlight compression. The instant the aura compressed, Goku's physical mass seemed to drop to 0. The 100 death saucers descended all at once, slicing through the exact space Goku had been standing in. Crash, shatter. The discs didn't hit Goku, they hit one. Another, slicing through Cell's telekinetic gravity field and cutting Frieza's own spatial anchors to ribbons. Goku had vanished, not by using instant transmission and not by moving fast. He had moved along the exact vibrational axis of the Death Saucer's path, slipping through the micromillimeters of space between the blades like a ghost passing through a waterfall. He reappeared directly in front of the Frieza clone, his face inches away from the featureless white glass mask. My turn, Goku whispered softly. The precision of divine Kai. The smooth, featureless glass mask of the Frieza clone reflected Goku's face in stunning, terrifying clarity. Goku's eyes were cold ruby gems, his form enveloped in that paper-thin, super-compressed veil of crimson god Kai. There was no roar, there was no wind-up. Goku extended his right hand, placing his middle and index fingers directly against the center of Frieza's smooth, purple-plated chest. You said this place remembers everything, Goku said, his voice barely above a whisper, echoing with calm authority. Then it should remember how Frieza's story actually ends, not with brute strength, but with his own energy turned back on him. Goku didn't throw a punch. Instead, he released a micro-frequency pulse of God Kai through his fingertips. a technique inspired by the Hakai energy he had witnessed Lord Beerus deploy, combined with his own mastered Kaioken control. Rather than projecting kinetic force into the physical mirror, Goku injected his refined God Kai into the vibrational frequency of the glass holding the clone together. Ping! It was a delicate, high-pitched ring, like a crystal wine glass tapped by a silver spoon. For a second, nothing happened. The Frieza clone stood frozen, its arm half raised to strike Goku. Then a microscopic fracture appeared beneath Goku's fingertips. The fracture didn't spread outward in straight lines. It expanded in concentric, spiraling circles, turning the clone's chest from solid glass into a shimmering vortex of silver dust. "What did you?" The synthesized voice gasped, cracking and pitching down into a distorted drone. "God Kai doesn't smash," Goku explained quietly, pulling his hand back. "It harmonizes. You tried to build a copy of Frieza out of mirror glass, but Frieza's heart was always jagged and full of cracks. A mirror can't hold something that broken without falling apart." The Frieza clone exploded inward, not with a violent blast, but dissolving silently into millions of harmless, weightless specks of light that drifted upward like glowing embers from a campfire. Across the dark, frictionless floor, the Cell and Kid Buu clones froze. Without Frieza's presence to balance the triad of Goku's past nightmares, the geometry holding their physical forms together began to destabilize. Cell's green chitin plates flickered, shifting back and forth between solid glass and liquid mercury. Kid Buu's pink frame stretched unnaturally high, its long head antenna wrapping around its own neck like a dying python. "It seems you have adapted," Cell's synthesized voice rasped, thousands of overlapping voices cutting through the static of the dimension. "But adaptation is my domain. I was built from the DNA of the greatest fighters in the cosmos." Cell spread his wings wide. The glass insect wings vibrated at a frequency so extreme that the inverted skyscrapers hanging above began to drop like giant glass stalactites, crashing into the void below and breaking into endless fields of glittering dust. "Ka," Cell chanted, drawing his hands back to his hip. "Me." Beside him, Kid Buu stopped flailing. The pink monster's face flattened into a wide, terrifying grin. It pulled its arms back in the exact same posture. "Ka," Buu echoed in a high-pitched, demonic screech. "Me." "Oh, come on," Goku groaned, stepping back as he watched two identical, massive spheres of raw, concentrated energy begin to expand in the hands of his mirrored foes. A double Kamehameha from two guys made of unbreakable mirror glass. If those two beams collide, they're gonna set off a chain reaction that'll lock this entire place in an infinite loop of explosions. Goku knew he couldn't let those blasts fire. If they hit the walls of the mirror dimension, the kinetic rebound would bounce back and forth forever, turning the entire realm into a deadly particle accelerator that would incinerate him regardless of his God Kai. "I can't let them finish the chant," Goku muttered. He dropped his compressed God Kai state and flared his aura outward into a brilliant, blinding sphere of magenta light. "Super Saiyan God Kaioken." Boom! A crimson dragon of heat and pressure erupted around Goku's body. The sudden, violent overlay of Kaioken on top of Super Saiyan God placed an immense strain on his physical body. His muscles swelled slightly, his veins bulged along his neck, and a sharp spike of pain shot through his broken ribs. Goku grit high, teeth forcing the agony down. "Just a split second, that's all I need." Pup. Using the absolute maximum speed of his Kaioken-infused instant transmission, Goku vanished. He didn't reappear in front of Cell or Buu. He reappeared between them, facing sideways, his arms thrown out to both sides. He placed his left palm directly on Cell's charging Kamehameha sphere and his right palm on Kid Buu's. "You guys want to use my move?" Goku roared over the deafening hum of the dual energy spheres. "Then take the energy back." Instead of pushing his Kai into the spheres to explode them, Goku used his divine Kaioken control to redirect the flow. He acted as a living copper wire, channeling Cell's charging energy straight through his own chest and dumping it into Kid Buu's sphere, while simultaneously pulling Buu's chaotic energy and feeding it into Cell. The two opposing energies, Cell's calculated, refined Kai and Buu's wild, primal chaos, met inside Goku's body. Goku's eyes went wide, blood spurting from his mouth as the two conflicting energies warred within his muscle fibers. His skin glowed translucent white as raw power surged through his heart and spine. The agony was unimaginable, like having his body ripped apart at the subatomic level by two wild beasts pulling in opposite directions. H! Goku screamed, forcing his Saiyan will over the chaotic flow. He reversed the polarity of both spheres, snapping his hands outward. Swoosh! Cell's charge was forced back down its own throat, and Buu's charge flooded its own core. The effect was instantaneous. The two mirror monsters didn't explode outward. Their internal structures were completely overwhelmed by the short-circuiting energy flow. Cell's green glass skin cracked into billions of microscopic squares, glowing bright yellow from the inside before collapsing into a mound of green sand. Kid Buu's pink form ballooned up like a giant water balloon, turned completely clear like pure water, and popped with a soft, quiet splash, disappearing into nothingness. Goku collapsed forward onto his hands and knees, dropping instantly back into his base form. Puff and huff. He panted heavily, hot crimson blood dripping from his chin onto the cool, dark glass floor. His gi was torn to shreds across his shoulders and chest, his ribs aching with every ragged breath he took. His Kaioken gamble had paid off, but the physical toll was heavy. Man, Goku wheezed, wiping his mouth with a trembling forearm. That was way too close. If I held that link for even half a second longer, my heart would have burst. He slowly pushed himself up, resting his hands on his knees as he surveyed the silent, empty wasteland. The duplicates were gone. The inverted city in the sky had stopped shifting, frozen in mid-rotation like a broken clock. The silence returned, absolute, cold, and heavy. But Goku knew he wasn't free. He looked up at the sky. High above the frozen, inverted skyscrapers, at the exact geometric center of this infinite realm, something new had appeared. It was a massive, floating octahedron made of obsidian glass, spinning slowly on its axis. Every face of the octahedron reflected a different universe. He saw flashes of Beerus's planet, the Supreme Kai's realm, the Tournament of Power Arena, and the quiet, peaceful yard of Capsule Corp where his family was waiting. The core, Goku realized, his eyes narrowing as he felt a cold, sharp energy radiating from the floating shape. That thing is holding this whole dimension together. It's the mirror heart. As if responding to his gaze, a deep, resonant hum vibrated from the octahedron. The geometry of the floor beneath Goku began to tilt. The vast, flat plane broke apart into thousands of rising hexagonal pillars, carrying Goku upward toward the spinning core like an elevator rising into the clouds. A voice no longer synthesized from his past enemies, but cold, ancient, and impersonal, echoed directly into Goku's mind. Fighter of Universe 7, you have conquered your memories. You have broken the reflections of your past. But to break space itself requires a price your mortal body cannot afford. Goku slowly straightened his back, pulling his shoulders back despite the tearing pain in his side. A quiet, confident smirk returned to his blood-stained face. I've been told that my whole life, Goku said, cracking his knuckles with a sharp clack. Every time somebody tells me I can't break something, I just gotta hit it harder. He crouched low on the rising pillar, his dark hair swaying in the rising spatial wind, staring straight at the spinning mirror heart. Let's see what happens when I go past my limits. The inverted apex. The hexagonal glass pillar rose through the void with sickening speed. Yet there was no wind resistance against Goku's face, no rush of atmospheric pressure popping his ears. The air was dead, cold, and heavy with a static charge that made every fine hair on his forearms stand up straight. As the pillar carried him closer to the spinning obsidian octahedron, the sky above and the ground below ceased to exist as separate concepts. Goku looked up toward the floating mirror heart. As he watched it, the core didn't seem to grow larger as he approached. It grew smaller, as if distance in this central hub worked in reverse. The closer he got to the object, the farther away it appeared to his eyes. "Okay," Goku muttered, squinting his dark eyes as a headache began to form behind his temples. "Looking at that thing is making my brain spin." He took a step forward to test the edge of his rising pillar. The moment his boot lifted off the surface, gravity snapped. Up became down. Goku felt an invisible, crushing weight grab his chest, flinging him upward away from the pillar, pulling him toward a floating patch of overturned glass mountains 2 miles to his left. He flipped in midair, attempting to catch his balance, but the moment his momentum shifted, gravity pivoted 90 degrees sideways. He was suddenly falling horizontally through a canyon made of frozen, crystalline light. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Goku spun 3 times, his orange gi snapping violently as he plummeted sideways through empty space. He flared his base Kai, trying to use his flight technique to stabilize his trajectory. Nothing happened. The air didn't offer any resistance against his Kai aura. Flying required pushing against the ambient energy of the universe, but here, the ambient energy was non-Euclidean. It had no vectors, no fixed direction, and no mass. Trying to fly in the core of the mirror dimension was like trying to swim in a vacuum. Thwack! Goku smashed back first into a giant, hexagonal pane of floating mirror glass. The impact shattered the pane into millions of floating diamonds, but Goku didn't bounce off. He stuck to the surface, his body glued to the glass by an arbitrary localized gravity field. "Gah," Goku gasped, clutching his bruised ribs. "Man, up is sideways, far is close, and flying doesn't work at all. This place is totally broken." He lay flat on his back on the floating pane, staring out into the impossible landscape. Around him, hundreds of inverted landmasses, shards of Earth, Namek, and distant alien worlds swallowed by the realm, were orbiting the central mirror heart in erratic, intersecting loops. A river of liquid metallic mercury flowed upward into a cloud of glowing glass sand. Light didn't travel in straight lines. It bent into tight spirals, creating brilliant, blinding halos of rainbow-colored arcs across the void. Goku pulled his legs underneath him and carefully pushed himself up into a low, crouching stance. "If my eyes are telling me one thing, but my body is feeling something else," Goku reasoned, taking a slow, measured breath, "then my eyes are just getting in the way." Slowly, deliberately, Son Goku closed his eyes. The instant he shut his eyes, the dizzying, nauseating kaleidoscope of shifting geometry vanished from his mind. In the total darkness behind his eyelids, Goku stopped trying to see space with physical sight. He began to reach out with his God Kai sensing, the heightened, hyper-aware perception he had honed under Wise's brutal training on Beerus's planet. When Goku looked at the universe through normal Kai sensing, he searched for living heartbeats, warmth, and kinetic energy. But in the core of the mirror dimension, there were no living heartbeats. Instead, he sensed stress lines. Every spatial distortion, every flipped gravity field, every bent beam of light generated a minute high-frequency vibration in the ambient God Kai contained within his own body. Space here wasn't empty. It was a tight, stressed fabric under immense tension. When gravity pulled him sideways, it was simply space folding inward like a pinched bedsheet. "I see it now," Goku murmured, his voice dropping into a quiet, rhythmic calm. "The world isn't moving. The floor under me is moving space around." Goku took a deep, centering breath. He didn't open his eyes. He relaxed his shoulders, letting his arms hang loosely at his sides. Ping! A spatial fold pinched 20 yards to his right. A massive fragment of an inverted glass skyscraper came hurtling toward him at supersonic speed, pulled by a sudden localized gravity surge. Goku didn't turn his head. He didn't look. He waited until the precise microsecond the spatial stress line crossed his personal aura envelope. Without opening his eyes, Goku executed a simple, elegant pivot on his left heel. He shifted his hips by 3 inches. WOSH. The giant skyscraper fragment sliced past his nose, missing him by less than a millimeter, passing through the space his torso had occupied a fraction of a second prior. The sheer displacement of air rustled his dark hair, but Goku didn't flinch. Left side, space is compressed, Goku analyzed internally, his mind mapping out the invisible landscape in real. Time, right side, space is stretched thin, the mirror heart in the middle. It's pulling all the folds into itself like the center of a spider web. Another spatial fold snapped above his head. 3 razor-sharp shards of spatial glass dropped straight down toward his shoulders. Goku didn't dodge this time. He raised his right index finger, channeling a precise thread of Super Saiyan God Kai directly into the tip. Tink, tink, tink. He tapped each falling shard with absolute mathematical precision. The divine Kai injected into the shards didn't break them. It neutralized their spatial momentum, causing them to freeze midair and float harmlessly around his head like glowing bubbles. Goku opened his eyes. His dark pupils were completely steady, unfazed by the swirling, nauseating geometry around him. A quiet, confident smirk returned to his face. "Eyes lie," Goku said softly to the empty void. "Kai doesn't." The mirror heart, spinning slowly at the non-physical center of the realm, seemed to perceive Goku's adaptation. The deep, resonant hum radiating from the octahedron shifted pitched, rising into a harsh, metallic screech that vibrated through the marrow of Goku's bones. The obsidian glass of the core began to glow with an intense, violet light, the color of concentrated, corrupted spatial magic. Crack! The void 50 yards in front of Goku tore, open like paper. Stepping out of the tier was not another duplicate of himself, nor a memory of a past villain. It was a guardian generated directly by the core, a massive, 8-armed automaton constructed entirely of interlocking, dark obsidian mirrors. It had no head, only a glowing violet eye embedded in the center of its broad, geometric chest. In each of its 8 hands, the sentinel held a weapon forged from folded spatial planes. Giant broadswords made of compressed distance, spears woven from twisted gravity, and shields formed from impenetrable reflective barriers. Guardian Protocol, Spatial Convergence. A hollow, booming voice resonated directly into the air around Goku. Mortal presence detected in the core axis. Eradication initiated. The spatial sentinel didn't dash forward. It simply extended 4 of its swords and sliced through the space between itself and Goku. Slash. The sentinel stood 50 yards away, but its blades didn't travel through the air to reach Goku. The blades severed the distance itself. Instantly, 4 massive spatial blades materialized 4 inches from Goku's chest, throat, and thighs, cutting through the reality around him with 0 travel time. Whoa! Goku's Saiyan reflexes, guided by his God Kai perception, kicked in before his conscious brain could react. He didn't try to step backward. Stepping backward in a folded space would have placed him directly onto the edge of the blade. Instead, Goku leaped into the attack, thrusting his hands forward and slamming his palms against the flat sides of the spatial broadswords. Clang! The impact rang out like a cathedral bell. The sheer force of the sentinel's strike drove Goku's feet 3 inches into the glass pane beneath him, but his palms held the spatial blades pinned in place. "You can cut through distance," Goku grunted, his teeth bared as divine red steam began to pour from his pores. "But distance is still just energy, and energy can be caught." The sentinel's violet eye flashed violently. With its 4 remaining arms, it raised its gravity spears and brought them down in a devastating, simultaneous thrust aimed directly for Goku's heart. Shattering the vector, the gravity spears descended like falling pillars, their tips glowing with dense, violet spatial mass. Because they warped gravity along their trajectory, the very air in front of Goku's face began to implode, pulling his clothes and skin toward the points of the weapons before they even made physical contact. Goku didn't attempt to dodge the 4 descending spears. With his palms still clamping the spatial broadswords in place, he unleashed a localized shockwave of Super Saiyan God Kai directly from his sternum. God burst. The explosion of divine crimson light flared outward in a tight, 3-foot radius. It wasn't a wide-area blast designed to destroy the realm. It was a high-frequency kinetic pulse tuned to disrupt localized gravity. The moment the divine energy hit the tips of the gravity spears, the unnatural weight holding them together shattered. The violet energy dissolved, turning the massive spears into brittle, harmless sticks of black obsidian that snapped under their own momentum. Crack, crack. The spatial sentinel recoiled, its 4 upper arms vibrating violently as the feedback from the severed gravity fields surged back into its core. Goku didn't waste a microsecond. Pushing off the clamped broadswords with his hands, he flipped over the sentinel's head. Mid-rotation, he brought his heels together, charging a short-range burst of Kai into his boots and kicked the sentinel directly in its glowing violet chest eye. Thwack! The automaton was hurled backward across the floating glass planes. But because space at the core was non-Euclidean, the sentinel didn't fly straight away from Goku. It flew in a tight spatial loop, disappearing into a distortion 50 yards to the left and reappearing half a second later directly behind Goku at double its original speed. Behind me, Goku's God Kai sensing pinged instantly. He spun on his ball of his foot, dropping his right elbow low into a tight, brutal counterblock. Boom! The sentinel's 4 remaining arms swept forward in a crushing hammer fist strike. Goku caught the combined blow on his forearm. The kinetic shockwave didn't scatter. It hit the floor beneath them, causing the floating glass island to fold in half like a piece of paper, trapping Goku and the giant automaton inside a V-shaped ravine of dark mirror glass. Enclosing spatial pocket complete, the hollow voice of the sentinel echoed inside the cramped glass ravine. Mortal target trapped, compression sequence initiated. The 2 walls of the ravine began to slam shut like a massive pair of iron jaws, intending to crush Goku into a flat, 2-dimensional plane of compressed matter. The dark glass walls closed in with terrifying force. Goku raised his arms, planting his right hand against the left wall and his left hand against the right wall, physically holding the 2 converging planes of reality apart. SCRECH. The friction was agonizing. The glass walls weren't just heavy, they were carrying the weight of entire folded sectors of the mirror dimension. Goku's muscles swelled to their absolute limit, his veins standing out like thick ropes under his skin. Sweat poured down his face, instantly vaporizing into white steam against his blazing crimson aura. GHH, Goku growled, his knees buckling under the crushing pressure. His fractured ribs screamed in protest, a sharp, stabbing pain catching in his throat with every breath. The spatial sentinel stood at the narrow end of the closing ravine, its single violet eye shining with cold, mechanical certainty. It raised its 2 primary blades, preparing to run Goku through while he was immobilized by the closing walls. Target physical output reaching terminal limit, the sentinel declared. Eradication imminent. Terminal limit. Goku gritted his teeth, a bloody grin forcing its way onto his lips through the pain. You really don't know much about Saiyans, do you? Goku closed his eyes for a split second, taking his focus away from the physical weight crushing his arms. He tuned back into the stress lines of the dimension. The 2 walls pressing against him weren't solid rock or metal. They were 2 opposing vectors of force, generated by the sentinel's violet core and held in place by the spinning mirror heart above. You're using 2 different directions to crush me, Goku panted, his voice steady despite the overwhelming pressure. So what happens if I turn them into the same direction? Goku didn't push outward against the walls anymore. Instead, he relaxed his left arm completely, letting the right wall slide inward, while simultaneously applying a sudden, massive burst of rotational force with his right arm against the left wall. Rather than stopping the crush, Goku redirected the closing angle. He transformed a straight, crushing squeeze into a high-speed rotational vortex. Swoosh! The 2 massive glass walls didn't collide flatly onto Goku. They slid past each other in a tight spiral, creating a powerful spatial whirlwind that caught the spatial sentinel off guard. The giant automaton lost its footing as the floor beneath it spun out of alignment, its body drawn into the center of the spatial vortex Goku had created. Spatial anomaly detected, calculations failing. The Sentinel's mechanical voice sputtered, its violet eye flashing erratically. "Here's the final calculation," Goku roared. He dropped low into the center of the spinning vortex, pulling his hands back to his hip. The crimson light of Super Saiyan God merged with the fiery crimson haze of the Kaioken, creating an intense, double-layered aura around his body. Ka-zemi, ha-emi. Goku didn't aim the energy sphere at the Sentinel. He aimed it at the center of the spatial vortex holding the ravine together. A brilliant, dense beam of divine energy erupted from Goku's hands. The beam didn't travel outward to destroy. It locked into the rotational spin of the spatial vortex, amplifying the rotational speed by a factor of 10,000 in a fraction of a second. The spatial friction reached a critical tipping point. The ravine, the floating glass island, and the spatial sentinel were all dragged into the center of the hyperspinning energy hurricane. Crunch, shatter. The sentinel's obsidian body couldn't withstand the extreme, twisting gravitational forces. Its 8 arms snapped off like BR. Its twigs and its central chest plate cracked wide open. The glowing violet eye shattered into a cloud of useless purple dust. With a final, deafening boom, the entire spatial ravine imploded inward, collapsing into a single, microscopic point of light before vanishing completely into the void. Goku floated in the empty air, panting heavily as his double-layered Kaioken aura faded back into a soft, steady Super Saiyan God glow. He wiped his mouth with the back of his torn sleeve, looking around the cleared space. The Sentinel was gone. The floating glass islands in his immediate vicinity had been swept away by the spatial vortex, leaving a wide, clear path leading straight to the central octahedron. The mirror heart was now less than 50 yards away. Up close, the obsidian core was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. It spun silently on its axis, its polished surfaces showing real-time reflections of distant worlds, stars, and galaxies across the multiverse. But as Goku floated closer, he noticed something strange. At the very center of the translucent obsidian octahedron, suspended in a sphere of golden, glowing energy, was a silhouette. It wasn't a monster, an automaton, or a magic spell. It was a person, dressed in a long, dark blue tunic, a high red cloak with gold embroidery, and a glowing, eye-shaped golden amulet resting against his chest. His hands were bound by shimmering bands of spatial magic, his eyes closed in a deep, forced trance. Goku blinked, dropping his combat stance in sheer surprise. "Wait a minute," Goku squinted at the floating figure inside the core. "That guy, isn't he a wizard from Earth?" The astral ghost. The air surrounding the central octahedron was unnaturally still. The dizzying, nauseating spins of non-Euclidean geometry seemed to lose their grip within a 50-foot radius of the translucent obsidian core. Here, suspended in a pocket of calm, Goku floated, his Super Saiyan God aura humming at a low, steady idle. His ruby-red eyes were locked onto the figure encased deep within the crystal matrix of the mirror heart. The man looked human, though clearly not a martial artist of the turtle or crane schools. He wore an ornate dark blue tunic bound by a woven belt, a broad red cloak with an exaggerated high collar resting over his shoulders, and an intricate eye-shaped golden talisman hanging around his neck. His face was sharp, carrying a neatly trimmed dark beard with silvering temples. He appeared suspended in a state of suspended animation, his eyes closed, his hands bound by glowing bands of pale blue runes. "Hey," Goku called out, taking a slow, floating step through the void. "Can you hear me? Are you stuck in there, too?" There was no physical movement from the body inside the octahedron. But as Goku took another step forward, the space directly in front of his face rippled like water under a falling raindrop. A semi-transparent, shimmering ghost-like form separated from the physical body inside the core, stepping through the obsidian surface as if it were nothing more than smoke. The figure drifted into the air 3 feet from Goku, hovering without touching the glass floor below. He can hear you, Son Goku, the spectral figure spoke. His voice didn't travel through the air. It resonated directly inside Goku's mind, clear, crisp, and refined, carrying a distinct accent that sounded like the city dwellers of West City. Though I advise you to lower your voice. The realm is listening to every word, every vibration, and every thought you produce. Goku blinked, relaxing his posture slightly, though his Saiyan instincts remained on high alert. Whoa, you're a ghost? No. Wait, your body's still in that big rock, but your soul is out here talking to me. It's like King Kai's projection magic. The man sighed, a thin, soundless breath, and shook his head with mild exasperation. I am not a ghost, nor am I a practitioner of whatever projection magic your King Kai uses. I am Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, though clearly not the Earth you hail from. Dr. Strange? Goku scratched the back of his head, his dark hair shifting slightly as his Super Saiyan God form naturally disengaged, returning him to his base form. So you're a doctor and a magic guy? That's pretty cool. Did you get pulled into this mirror place like I did? I did not get pulled in, Goku. I was trapped, Strange replied, his astral form floating higher, his sharp gray eyes scanning the far edges of the dark geometric void. And if you continue attempting to punch your way through the geometry of this dimension, you will ensure that neither of us ever leaves. Section II, the mechanics of an infinite cave. Goku tilted his head, leaning his hands on his hips. What do you mean? I was doing fine. I figured out that if I use God Kai instead of normal force, the glass can't reflect it as easily. I even beat those glass copies of Frieza and Cell. You dealt with the realm's surface-level immune response, Strange corrected smoothly, pointing a translucent finger toward the spinning obsidian core behind him. The mirror dimension was not created to be a prison for grand multiversal warriors. It is a parallel space layer, an echo of reality used by sorcerers to practice mystic arts, contain threats, and isolate damage without affecting the real world. So it's like a playground where you can break stuff and nobody gets hurt? Goku asked, his interest piqued. That sounds great. It was a contained space, Strange said, his spectral tone dropping into a grave, heavy register. Until an interdimensional anomaly torn across the boundaries of our respective realities. When your immense power collided with the magic securing this sector, the mirror dimension folded in on itself. It locked onto the highest source of kinetic and spiritual energy in its proximity, which happened to be you. Strange drifted closer to Goku, his astral hands tracing invisible, glowing orange lines in the air between them. A miniature, glowing model of the octahedron appeared between his fingers. The mirror dimension is infinite, Goku. It has no physical boundaries, no edge, and no bottom. When you throw a punch using physical force, you are not cracking a wall, you are feeding kinetic energy into the dimensional grid. The realm takes your strength, duplicates it, and uses it to expand the cage. The harder you fight, the larger, denser, and more hostile the mirror becomes. Goku looked down at his gloved hands, then back at the spinning octahedron. So, when I fired my Kamehameha earlier, you gave the realm enough raw fuel to construct an entire localized defense network, Strange finished grimly. Including the spatial sentinel you just destroyed, and the containment matrix currently holding my physical body hostage at the core axis. Man, Goku sighed, dropping his shoulders with a chuckle of genuine embarrassment. Vegeta always says I hit things before I think. Guess he would have had a field day seeing this. Your friend Vegeta would be equally trapped, Strange noted dryly. Brute force is useless against a realm built on pure mathematical infinite geometry. You cannot break a house when the bricks are made of your own effort. Section III, the unraveling realm. Before Goku could ask how Strange planned to get them out, the atmospheric pressure in the central hub shattered completely. The temperature dropped from cold to absolute zero in a fraction of a millisecond. The pale, rainbow-colored light arcing across the void faded into a dead, void-black shadow. The obsidian faces of the mirror heart began to spin at a terrifying speed, casting erratic, jagged lines of purple light across the floating platforms. SCRECH. A sound like a million sheets of metal grinding together echoed through Goku's mind. Strange's astral form flickered wildly, glowing static washing across his chest and face. "Strange," Goku barked, dropping into a wide stance as his base aura flared up defensively. "What's happening?" "The realm has realized that its physical guardians were insufficient," Strange's voice echoed, sounding strained and distorted as if passing through a dying radio. "It is no longer trying to defeat you with fighters or physical obstacles. It is initiating a reality unraveling sequence." Goku looked down at his feet. The floating glass platform he was standing on wasn't cracking or breaking into shards. It was unspooling. The solid matter was dividing into paper-thin, transparent threads of light that dissolved into empty space. He looked at his own right hand. The edges of his orange geese sleeve were beginning to blur, turning into fuzzy, pixelated lines of geometric code that drifted away into the dark void. "Hey, my clothes are disappearing," Goku yelled, trying to grab his fading sleeve, only for his fingers to pass right through the blurred material. "It's not just breaking stuff, it's making things stop being real." "The dimension is purging the localized space," Strange warned, his astral arms moving in complex geometric circles as he attempted to weave glowing golden mystic shields around his locked physical body. "It is stripping away physical mass, atomic structure, and Kai signatures to reset the sector to absolute zero. If those spatial threads reach your core, Son Goku, you will not die. You will simply cease to have ever existed." Goku felt a cold drop of sweat run down his temple. Fighting a guy who could blow up planets was simple. Fighting a guy who could regenerate was fine. But fighting a world that was quietly turning his very body into nothingness, that was a brand new kind of challenge. Goku pulled his arms into his chest, his dark eyes shining with intense concentration. "So how do we stop it, sorcerer guy?" "We don't stop it," Strange said, his spectral hands glowing with bright golden Tau mandalas. "We break the spell holding the M." Ear heart locked. "But to do that, you must deliver an attack that doesn't push against space. You need an attack that bypasses reality entirely." The mechanics of erasure. The ambient reality was decaying at a terrifying velocity. Goku watched as the edges of his boots turned translucent, revealing the dark void beneath them. The unspooling effect was not an energy attack. It was a fundamental subtraction of matter and spatial coordinates. Where the spatial threads touched, concepts like length, mass, and density simply dissolved into non-existence. "Gah!" Goku grunted, pulling his hands inward. He flared his base Kai, attempting to push the encroaching, unraveling field away with a physical aura wave. The aura exploded outward and instantly unspooled into thin golden threads that faded into nothingness. The unraveling field didn't even slow down. "I told you," Dr. Strange's astral voice bellowed through the psychic connection, his spectral frame flickering like a dying candle in a hurricane. "Standard Kai is bound to the physical universe. It relies on atomic displacement and kinetic pressure. The unraveling sequence operates on the underlying matrix of reality itself. It eats physical energy for breakfast." "Then what isn't physical?" Goku shouted over the deafening, silent roar of unspooling space. His knees were beginning to blur now. He could feel the terrifying sensation of losing touch with his own legs, as if his nerve endings were being unplugged from his brain one by one. "Concept, will, mind." Strange's astral hands moved with blinding speed, tracing complex, burning orange runes in the air. Glowing golden Tau mandalas expanded around his spectral body, temporarily halting the unspooling effect within a tiny 3-foot safe zone. "You possess a state of being that operates beyond thought and physical intent, don't you? I sensed it the moment you entered the realm." Goku's eyes widened. "You mean ultra instinct?" "Whatever you call it, the state where your body acts independently of conscious physical direction," Strange commanded, his glowing golden shield straining against the purple waves of absolute zero unraveling energy. "Autonomous movement relies on natural instinct, not spatial calculation. It does not push against the grid. It flows through the gaps of probability. Activate it now, or there won't be enough of you left to form a soul." Goku didn't hesitate. He knew the risks. Using autonomous ultra instinct, while his body was already battered by broken ribs and internal Kaioken strain, was dangerous. but standing still meant being erased down to the atomic level. Goku closed his eyes. He didn't drop into a wide fighting stance. He didn't scream or flare his muscles. He let out a long, slow breath, releasing every trace of tension from his shoulders, his arms, his core, and his mind. He let go of the pain in his broken ribs. He let go of his fear of the unraveling void. He let go of the conscious desire to win, to break the cage, or even to survive. He emptied the cup completely. WOSH. A serene, silver-white heat ignited around Goku's frame. His hair didn't turn golden or magenta. It remained dark, but each strand lifted slightly, glowing with an ethereal, starlit silver sheen. His eyes snapped open, revealing calm, silver-gray pupils that radiated absolute, pristine quiet. Ultra Instinct Sign. Section V, floating on the edge of nothing. The moment Ultra Instinct Sign engaged, the unraveling field hit Goku's silver aura and slipped right past. Because Goku was no longer making conscious physical calculations or exerting kinetic resistance, his body moved on a subatomic, instinctual level. When a thread of spatial erasure swept toward his ankles, his legs didn't dodge. They subtly phase-shifted along the quantum probability axis, allowing the erasure thread to pass through the empty space between his atoms without making contact. Remarkable, Strange whispered, his astral form stilled in awe. He isn't fighting the spatial decay. His body is constantly micro-repositioning itself into the exact coordinates where the decay hasn't happened yet. Goku didn't speak. In the ultra-instinct state, unnecessary speech and conscious thought were discarded to preserve absolute efficiency. He raised his eyes toward the spinning obsidian octahedron at the core. Suspended inside, Dr. Strange's physical body remained wrapped in pale blue bands of spatial containment runes. Goku took a single step forward. He didn't run or leap. He walked across the unspooling void as if stepping on solid ground. With every step, his silver-white aura rippled like calm water, neutralizing the purple unraveling field in his immediate wake. Goku, listen to me carefully. Strange's astral projection flew alongside him, his golden Tau mandalas blazing to clear a path through the spatial storm. The mirror heart is anchored by 3 primary mystic keystones located inside the octahedron. They are locking my physical form into the dimensional engine. If you strike the core directly with force, the engine will trigger a total collapse, sealing us both in the void forever. Goku gave a single, quiet nod. You must cut the anchors without touching the glass matrix, Strange instructed, his translucent hands gesturing rapidly to illustrate the spell mechanics. I am going to cast the vapors of Voltor to create a temporary mystic bridge between my astral form and my physical hands. The second I open the core's defensive layer, you must deliver a strike infused with that silver state's energy directly into the central keystone. Goku extended 2 fingers on his right hand, pulling them back near his chest. The silver-white aura surrounding his body began to pull inward, condensing around his fingertips like a tiny, swirling galaxy of liquid silver light. Ready, Goku said, his voice flat, cool, and devoid of fear. Section VI, the Mystic Conduit. By the hoary hosts of Hagath. Dr. Strange's astral form bellowed, his voice echoing with ancient, arcane resonance that pierced straight through the silent roar of the unraveling dimension. His spectral hands crossed at the wrists, forming an intricate golden eye symbol in the air. Blinding ribbons of crimson and gold eldritch energy erupted from his glowing fingers, shooting straight into the translucent faces of the spinning obsidian mirror heart. The octahedron shrieked. The dark glass surface didn't break. Instead, the eldritch magic forced the faces of the core to turn transparent, exposing the glowing, pale blue containment bands wrapping around Strange's physical body. Now, Goku, Strange roared, his astral projection turning translucent as he poured every drop of his remaining spiritual energy into holding the magic conduit open. Strike the central node, bypassing physical reality. Goku moved. He didn't use instant transmission. He didn't use hypersonic flight. In the ultra-instinct state, Goku simply existed at the destination. 1 millisecond, he was 10 yards away. The next, he was standing directly in front of the opened face of the mirror heart, his silver-infused fingertips extended toward the central blue containment rune. Ping! Goku tapped the rune with his 2 fingers. It was not a heavy punch. There was no explosive shockwave, no flaring heat, no kinetic rebound. The silver energy of Ultra Instinct passed straight through the physical obsidian glass matrix, entering the non-physical realm of the spell itself. The divine instinctual energy harmonized with the precise frequency of Strange's magic, dissolving the blue containment bands into harmless, glittering gold dust. Crack shatter. Inside the core, Dr. Stephen Strange's physical eyes snapped open, glowing with brilliant green eldritch light. The physical sorcerer gasped, drawing a deep, ragged breath of real air into his lungs for the first time in weeks. His physical arms broke free of the matrix, sweeping wide as his crimson cloak of levitation billowed wildly behind him. The Eye of Agamotto, Strange roared, pressing his thumbs together against his chest, commands this reality to halt. The golden amulet hanging from his neck opened like a mechanical flower, exposing a brilliant, glowing green stone at its center. WOSH. A wave of pure, emerald green temporal energy blasted outward from the core in a wide, expanding ring. The purple unraveling field instantly froze midair. The unspooling threads of space stopped dissolving, hovering like frozen spiderwebs in the dark void. The dizzying, nauseating spins of the inverted cityscape locked into absolute immobility. Dr. Strange stepped out of the shattered obsidian matrix, landing lightly on the stabilized glass floor beside Goku. He dusted off his tunic, adjusting his crimson cloak with practiced elegance, before turning his sharp gray eyes toward the silver-haired Saiyan. "Not bad, Son Goku," Strange said with a dry, tired smirk. "Not bad at all." Goku dropped out of Ultra Instinct sign, his hair returning to its natural black state as he let out a long, exhausted sigh, dropping his hands to his knees. "Man," Goku wheezed, grinning through his sweat, "that magic stuff of yours is seriously crazy." The geometry of fusion. The emerald light radiating from the Eye of Agamotto held the surrounding void in a fragile, suspended animation. Thousands of thread-like fractures in reality hung frozen midair like glowing green veins. Dr. Strange stood beside Goku, his right hand tracing complex, fluid arcs in the air. The green light of the time stone pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, maintaining a localized temporal stasis around their immediate platform. Beside him, Goku leaned heavily against an overturned pillar of dark obsidian glass, his chest heaving as his body recovered from the punishing strain of Ultra Instinct sign. "How long can you hold that green spell, Doctor? Gee." Goku panted, wiping a smear of blood and sweat from his chin with the back of his ripped sleeve. "Not long enough if you keep standing there bleeding," Strange replied, his tone sharp but devoid of malice. He didn't turn his head. His focus remained entirely on the intricate eldritch geometry expanding from his fingertips. The Eye of Agamotto is forcing a localized temporal loop on the immediate environment, freezing the decay. But the mirror dimension is vast. It is already recalculating its structure around us. Recalculating? Goku raised an eyebrow, adjusting the torn sash at his waist. "You mean it's gonna try to smash us with those giant glass mountains again?" "Worse," Strange murmured. His hands slowed, fingers spreading wide as a pale blue Tau mandala expanded before him like a circular stained glass window. "It is combining your memories with mine. The realm realizes that physical force and pure erasure failed. Now it is reshaping its architecture to create a psychological labyrinth from which neither of us can orient ourselves." Before Goku could ask what a psychological labyrinth meant, the emerald stasis snapped. Crack boom! The green hue holding the air together shattered into glittering dust. The surrounding void didn't collapse into darkness. It exploded into a blinding, multicolored kaleidoscope of architecture. Space folded outward in 4 dimensions at once. From the ceiling of the void, the towering, sleek white domes and curved glass skyscrapers of West City descended like stalactites. From the left, the jagged, blood-red canyons and harsh, obsidian battlements of planet Vegeta surged sideways, interlocking seamlessly with the terrestrial buildings. From the right, the grand, darkwood corridors, stained glass windows, and dusty bookshelves of the Sanctum Sanctorum unspooled, stretching out for miles in an endless, looping maze of hallways. Goku blinked, looking around in utter bewilderment. He stood on a street paving stone from West City, but 3 feet to his right, the road turned into the harsh, gravity-heavy red dirt of his ancestral homeworld. Directly above his head, an overturned Victorian staircase from Strange's sanctum floated upside down, its antique clock ticking backward with a heavy, metallic click-clack. Whoa, Goku breathed, his dark eyes wide as he spun around in a full circle. Is that Capsule Corp, but why is it attached to a Saiyan base, and what's with all the dusty old books in the sky? It is an infinite city, Strange explained, his crimson cloak of levitation fluttering as he hovered 2 feet off the shifting street. A non-Euclidean spatial composite built directly from our subconscious minds. Every street corner leads back into another memory. Every door opens into a different point in time. Section II, the fractured compass. Goku took a step forward, his boots making a dull thud on the red dirt of planet Vegeta. Instantly, the gravity beneath his feet spiked to 10 times Earth's normal pull, the native gravitational weight of the Saiyan homeworld. Whoa, gravity shifted, Goku laughed, adjusting his footing with effortless ease. Man, this brings back memories. Not that I remember planet Vegeta much, but my body definitely knows this weight. Do not get comfortable, Goku, Strange warned, drifting alongside him. Look at the compass points. Strange raised his left hand, conjuring a glowing orange eldritch compass in the air. The needle wasn't pointing north or south. It was spinning uncontrollably, splitting into 4 distinct needles that pointed up, down, inward, and backward. In a normal spatial layer, we could simply fly toward the highest point or follow a straight line until we breached the boundary, Strange analyzed, his gray eyes scanning the impossible skyline where a West City monorail train was currently driving vertically up the side of a Saiyan battle tower. Here, straight lines are an illusion. If you walk down that street for 1,000 miles, you will simply step out of the front door of the Sanctum Sanctorum behind us. Goku brought 2 fingers to his forehead, closing his eyes. Then I'll just lock onto a Kai signature outside. Gohan, Piccolo, Vegeta. Somebody's gotta be throwing out energy back home. He focused his mind, reaching out past the shifting skyscrapers and red canyons. Ping! His Kai sensing pinged instantly, but instead of finding one Gohan or one Vegeta, his mind was flooded with a million faint, distorted echoes. He felt Vegeta's Kai, but it was coming from 6 inches inside his own chest. He felt Gohan's Kai coming from the sky above, from the dirt below, and from a floating bookshelf 20 yards away. Goku dropped his fingers from his forehead, his face darkening slightly. It's echoing everything. Every time I search for a Kai, the city builds a fake copy of it inside one of these rooms. Precisely, Strange nodded grimly. The realm is using our own sensory networks against us. If you follow one of those false Kai signatures, you will walk directly into a localized spatial pocket that will lock behind you. So how do we open a door out of here? Goku asked, turning to the sorcerer. You've got that glowing ring thing, right? The one you used to make those orange portals. Strange raised his right hand, displaying a bronze 2-fingered ring on his index and middle fingers, the sling ring. I can construct a gateway, Strange said, his expression grave. However, a sling ring requires a clear, unambiguous visualization of the destination. In this kaleidoscope, every time I try to visualize the courtyard of the sanctum or the wastelands of Earth, the mirror dimension warps the image in my mind, shifting the spatial coordinates before the portal can stabilize. Strange raised both hands, drawing a wide circle in the air. Spark! A shower of brilliant golden sparks erupted in the air between them. A small, circular orange portal began to form, showing a brief glimpse of the green grass and blue skies of Earth. But before the portal could expand, a floating building from the infinite city shifted behind them. The spatial coordinates twisted, and the portal snapped shut with a harsh crack, leaving behind only a trail of dying sulfurous smoke. See, Strange sighed, lowering his hands. The spatial topology is fluid. The city shifts faster than I can lock the destination. Goku watched the smoke drift away, his mind working rapidly. So, you need the target to stay still long enough for your ring to catch it. Correct, Strange replied. I need a fixed, unshakable anchor, a point in space that cannot be warped by this realm's geometry. A slow, confident grin began to spread across Goku's face. A fixed anchor, huh? Goku chuckled, rolling his shoulders and cracking his knuckles with a sharp clack. I think I can build you one of those. Section III, the core of absolute will. Dr. Strange turned his head, eyeing the Saiyan with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Goku, an anchor in this realm requires an absolute, unyielding concentration of energy, something so dense that its gravitational and spatial footprint forces the surrounding geometry to lock into a single state. Yeah, I know, Goku said smoothly, stepping out onto the center of the red dirt intersection where West City's concrete met planet Vegeta's stone. When I was fighting Giant in the Tournament of Power, the whole world felt like it was gonna tear apart from our energy. But when I reached the complete version of Ultra Instinct, everything went quiet. The air, the arena, the void. It all just stopped moving. Goku dropped his arms loose at his sides. His posture became completely relaxed, his knees slightly bent, his head level. I can't hold that form for very long, Goku admitted quietly, his voice dropping into a calm, rhythmic register. And my body's already banged up from using the incomplete version earlier, but if you just need a few seconds of frozen space to spin your portal, I can give you those seconds. Strange observed Goku's shifting posture. As a master of the mystic arts, Strange could perceive subtle shifts in spiritual and dimensional pressure that normal eyes missed. He saw the ambient light around Goku begin to stall. The shifting West City skyscrapers stopped mid-rotation. The inverted monorail suspended in the sky locked in place. You intend to use your own soul as a spatial anchor, Strange realized, his tone carrying a rare note of genuine respect. If you fail to maintain absolute harmony while in that state, the spatial feedback will tear your physical body to pieces. Then I guess I better not fail, Goku said, a warm, fearless smile flashing across his face for a single second before his expression settled into absolute, pristine quiet. Goku closed his eyes. WOSH. He didn't scream, he didn't flare a golden aura. A wave of intense, suffocating heat erupted from Goku's body, not thermal heat that burns skin, but the blinding, absolute heat of pure, concentrated existence. The dark hair on his head lifted, turning a bright, brilliant silver white. His eyebrows shifted to the same shimmering hue, and when his eyelids opened, his pupils were cold, pristine silver orbs that reflected no shadow and held no fear. Mastered Ultra Instinct. The effect on the infinite city was instantaneous and terrifying. Boom! The shifting kaleidoscope of buildings, corridors, and red canyons froze. The non-Euclidean geometry, the impossible loops where up became down and distance stretched infinitely, was violently flattened by the sheer, absolute density of the divine energy radiating from Goku's body. The air around him turned into a rigid, impenetrable crystalline grid. Space itself was forced to stand still in the presence of a mortal who had achieved the domain of the gods. Now Strange, Goku's voice echoed, not from his throat, but from the ambient air itself, resonant calm, ND dual-toned, open the gate. Dr. Strange didn't waste a millisecond. Grasping the sling ring tightly, he swept his right hand through the stabilized air in a wide, powerful arc. BZZZZZT. A massive, blazing ring of golden eldritch fire ignited in front of them. Unhindered by shifting geometry, the portal expanded rapidly, revealing the clear, peaceful afternoon sky above the wastelands of Earth, the exact spot where Goku had been pulled into the mirror dimension hours before. The gateway is locked, Strange shouted over the roar of the eldritch flames. Step through. Goku took a step toward the portal. But as his boot touched the threshold, a cold, terrifying hand reached out from the dark, shifting shadows of the infinite city behind them, gripping Goku's left shoulder with a vice-like hold. Goku turned his silver eyes sideways. Standing directly behind him, bathed in a pale, corrupted violet aura, was a figure identical to his current form, a mirror duplicate clad in a pitch-black gi, possessing the exact same shimmering silver hair and pristine silver eyes. The mirror reflection of mastered Ultra Instinct. The shadow of perfection. The grip on Goku's shoulder carried zero physical weight, yet it felt like an anchor forged from compressed dark matter. Goku stood motionless on the threshold of Dr. Strange's blazing golden portal. The cool, fresh breeze of the Earth's wastelands blew through the circular portal, washing over his face and bringing with it the familiar smell of sun-baked rock and wild flora. Home was less than 5 feet away, but behind him, the mirrored duplicate held him fast to the shifting grid of the infinite city. Dr. Strange turned sharply, his crimson cloak of levitation snapping around his shoulders as he raised his hands, golden Tau mandalas igniting instantly over his knuckles. "Goku, don't let it disrupt your state," Strange warned, his gray eyes locked on the shadowy entity. "That construct isn't just an illusion, it is a spatial parasite. It has synthesized your mastered Ultra Instinct using the raw energy you unleashed to stabilize the realm." Goku didn't break his calm posture. In the mastered Ultra Instinct state, emotional spikes like shock, anger, or frustration were instantly filtered out, leaving behind only crystal-clear tactical awareness. He slowly turned his head, his silver pupils meeting the cold, empty silver eyes of his mirror counterpart. The construct was a terrifying sight. It wore a charcoal-black version of Goku's martial arts gi, but its skin was translucent like dark obsidian, showing veins of pale, pulsing violet light beneath the surface. The silver aura radiating from its body wasn't clean and peaceful like Goku's. It was jagged, crackling with dark, high-frequency spatial static that made the air around it hum with a nauseating ring. "Leave yourself behind," the mirror duplicate spoke. Its voice was a dual-toned resonance, blending Goku's own voice with the cold, mechanical hum of the mirror dimension. "You gave this realm a soul when you reached the divine state. Now, the realm requires your body to complete the cycle." The dark clone didn't pull back a fist to punch. Instead, it executed a micro-shift, the exact same instinctual instant displacement Goku used. In a fraction of a nanosecond, the dark clone shifted its center of gravity, bringing a sharp, straight palm strike toward Goku's solar plexus. Thwack! Goku's body reacted autonomously. Without a conscious command from his brain, Goku's left forearm swept downward, parrying the palm strike by a fraction of an inch. The sheer kinetic displacement generated by two mastered Ultra Instinct entities colliding in midair produced a shockwave that flattened 3 blocks of the inverted West City skyscrapers surrounding them. "Gah!" Strange gritted his teeth, holding the sling ring portal open with sheer willpower as the spatial shockwave rattled his eldritch shields. "The portal's anchor is slipping. Goku, if this battle escalates, the dimensional feedback will destroy the gateway." "Step through, Strange," Goku said, his voice flat, cool, and echoing with divine resonance as he parried a lightning-fast 3-punch combination from the dark clone. "Get back to Earth and hold the portal open from the outside." "I am not leaving you locked in this labyrinth," Strange countered, tracing an intricate golden arc with his left hand to fire a series of burning eldritch whips toward the dark clone's ankles. The dark clone didn't even look down. Its body phase shifted naturally, allowing Strange's golden whips to pass through its dark legs as if they were made of mist. "It's no use, Doctor," Goku said, shifting his weight into a rising elbow strike that the dark clone effortlessly dodged by swaying its torso backward. "It has the same autonomous movement I do. Physical hits and standard magic won't connect unless the timing is absolute zero. Get to the other side." "I'll be right behind you." Dr. Strange hesitated for a single second, his sharp mind calculating the probabilities. Remaining inside the mirror dimension while 2 Ultra Instinct entities warred would inevitably destroy his physical body or disrupt the sling ring's spatial coordinates. 3 minutes, Goku," Strange declared, leaping backward through the sparkling golden portal. I will anchor the gateway to the cliffside in the wastelands. If you are not through in 3 minutes, I will be forced to sever the connection before the mirror dimension bleeds into our universe. WOSH. Doctor Strange disappeared through the golden ring, landing on the dusty red rock of Earth. From the outside, the portal remained suspended in midair like a burning hoop of golden fire, showing the chaotic battle raging inside the infinite city. Section V, Battle of the Empty Mirrors. With Doctor Strange on the outside, the final barrier holding the mirror dimension back was Son Goku himself. Goku and his dark reflection stood 3 feet apart in the center of the frozen, kaleidoscope intersection. The silver aura around Goku burned with steady, pristine heat, while the dark clone's aura crackled with violent, dark violet lightning. Neither moved. In a fight between 2 combatants who possess mastered Ultra Instinct, standard attack strategies are completely obsolete. Neither fighter relies on sight, sound, or conscious thought. Both bodies react to the microscopic shifts in air pressure, intent, and quantum probability before an attack is even initiated. For 10 agonizing seconds, the 2 silver-haired warriors simply stared at each other in total silence. Then space tore open. Boom, 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 boom. They vanished simultaneously. To a normal eye, the battlefield would have appeared completely empty. But across the entire infinite city, on the roofs of West City, along the red cliffs of planet Vegeta, and inside the endless floating corridors of the Sanctum Sanctorum, hundreds of violent, silver and purple kinetic explosions erupted at once. Thwack clang bang. Goku threw a right jab aimed at the clone's jaw. The clone swayed its head 3 millimeters to the left, countering with a sweeping leg kick. Goku's left leg lifted autonomously, blocking the kick while his right palm drove forward in a concentrated God Fist strike. The dark clone phase shifted through the strike, reappearing behind Goku's right shoulder with a razor-sharp chop aimed at his neck. Every attack was met with a flawless, instantaneous parry or dodge. It was not a chaotic brawl. It was a high-speed, mathematical dance of absolute perfection. It's perfect, Goku thought, his mind detached and calm even as his body executed thousands of supersonic combat maneuvers per second. It copied my body's reflexes down to the last muscle fiber. Every time I strike, it dodges using the exact same path I would take. Goku landed on the roof of a floating, inverted capsule corp dome, his silver boots leaving no mark on the glass surface. The dark clone landed 50 yards away on a floating bookshelf, its dark silver aura flaring violently. You cannot hit that which moves as you move, the dark clone echoed, its voice vibrating through the glass buildings. I am your instinct, I am your perfection, you cannot beat your own absolute state. Goku took a slow, deep breath. His silver aura flickered slightly, a warning sign that his body was beginning to feel the agonizing physical toll of maintaining mastered Ultra Instinct after suffering fractured ribs and internal Kaioken strain earlier. You copied my state, Goku said quietly, his silver pupils tracking the dark clone's position. You copied how my body moves without thinking, but there's one thing you couldn't copy. Goku dropped his hands. He didn't raise his guard. He didn't tighten his muscles. He completely relaxed his body, even more than Ultra Instinct required. You're a copy of who I am right now, Goku spoke softly, his voice carrying warm, human confidence. But I'm a Saiyan, we don't stay the same for very long. Section VI, the flaw in absolute reflex. The dark clone didn't analyze Goku's words. It acted on pure threat perception. Seeing Goku drop his guard completely, the dark clone's autonomous programming identified a high-probability opening. It surged forward at blinding speed, crossing the 50 yards in 0 time, driving a dark silver-infused punch straight for the center of Goku's chest. Goku didn't dodge. He didn't use Ultra Instinct to phase shift away. Instead, Goku did something completely irrational, something a pure, emotionless instinct engine like the mirror duplicate could never calculate or predict. Goku stepped into the punch. Thwack. The dark clone's fist struck Goku square in the chest, breaking through his gi and cracking against his breastbone. The blunt force knocked the air from Goku's lungs, fresh blood spurting from his mouth and splashing against the dark clone's face. The dark clone froze for a microscopic fraction of a second. Its programming was built on dodging and executing flawless parries. It had not calculated an opponent willingly accepting a fatal blow to lock the distance. Gotcha, Goku rasped through the blood in his teeth. Before the dark clone's autonomous reflexes could register the trap and pull its fist back, Goku threw both of his arms around the clone's striking arm, trapping the dark entity's limb against his ribs with a vice-like grip. "What is this?" The dark clone's voice glitched, its featureless silver eyes flashing erratically as its spatial calculations failed. "Irrational action," self-harm detected, logically impossible. "Ultra instinct is great because it thinks for you," Goku grinned, his dark Saiyan spirit bursting through the serene silver state. "But sometimes, you gotta let the martial artist make the call." Goku flared his energy to its absolute, ungodly maximum. Super Saiyan Blue, Kaioken times 20. Boom! A blinding, violent explosion of deep blue and fiery crimson energy erupted directly over his mastered Ultra Instinct form. The simultaneous overlay of Divine God Kai, Raw Saiyan Transformation, Kaioken Multiplier, and Ultra Instinct created an unstable, hyperdense aura storm that the mirror dimension's geometry could not calculate or absorb. "H-A-A-A!" Goku roared, his hair shifting from silver to a chaotic, blazing teal-blue wrapped in red heat haze. The sheer, raw friction of combining three opposing energy systems in a single point overloaded the dark clone's dark obsidian body. Cracks of brilliant white light spiderwebbed across the clone's face, chest, and arms. Goku pulled his right fist back, drawing every remaining drop of his energy, his willpower, and his Saiyan pride into his knuckles. Dragon Fist. Roared. A massive golden dragon composed of pure, compressed God Kai erupted from Goku's fist. The dragon didn't just strike the dark clone. It tore through the dark entity, shattered the floating capsule corp building, and ripped a miles-wide hole straight through the non-Euclidean geometry of the infinite city. The dark clone screeched, a sound of shattering glass and collapsing spatial calculations, before dissolving completely into a cloud of harmless, golden dust. Section VII, The Leap Home. Puff and huff. Goku dropped back into his base form instantly, collapsing onto one knee on the crumbling edge of the spatial hole he had just blasted. His gi was completely destroyed from the waist up, his body covered in deep bruises, burns, and blood. Every muscle in his body felt like it was on fire, his heart hammering violently against his fractured ribs. Across the collapsing void, less than 20 yards away, Dr. Strange's sling ring portal was flickering wildly, its golden eldritch sparks beginning to die down as the 3-minute mark approached. "Goku," Dr. Strange's voice bellowed from the other side of the portal in the wastelands of Earth. "The realm is collapsing. Jump now." Goku looked up, wiping his bloody mouth with the back of his bruised hand. He forced his shaking legs to stand, pushing through the agonizing physical exhaustion. "Man," Goku wheezed, a genuine tired smile breaking across his face. "That was one crazy workout." With a final, desperate surge of his base Saiyan strength, Goku pushed off his boots and leaped through the air, throwing his body straight toward the burning golden ring. WOSH. Goku tumbled through the portal, crashing heavily onto the warm, dry red dirt of the Earth's wastelands. He rolled 3 times before coming to a stop on his back, staring up at the real, beautiful blue afternoon sky. Behind him, Dr. Strange swept his arm across his body, severing the sling ring connection. Crack spark. The golden portal closed with a sharp pop. The spatial tier vanished, leaving behind only the quiet, gentle breeze of the Earth Canyon. Dr. Strange walked over, his crimson cloak settling around his shoulders as he looked down at the battered Saiyan lying in the dirt. He reached into his belt pouch, pulling out a small, glowing green talisman, and cast a mild mystic mending spell to stop Goku's internal bleeding. "You are, without a doubt, the most reckless mortal I have ever encountered across any dimension," Strange said, though a rare, approving smirk touched his lips. Goku lay on his back, breathing in the sweet, clean air of his home world, and let out a loud, hearty laugh that echoed across the canyon. "Ha ha ha, man, I'm starving," Goku grinned, looking up at the sorcerer. "Hey, sorcerer guy, you know any good places to eat around here?" The bleeding horizon. The dry heat of the Earth's wastelands settled heavily over the red rock canyons, but the air remained distinctly wrong. Goku lay stretched out on his back, his destroyed orange gi exposing crisscrossing deep purple bruises and scorched skin. Dr. Strange stood a few feet away, his arms extended, his hands tracing intricate, glowing emerald loops in the dust-choked air. The gentle mending spell radiating from his fingers knitted together the micro-tears in Goku's muscles. But even supreme mystic arts could not instantly erase the profound physical exhaustion of a Saiyan who had stacked Kaioken upon God Kai inside a closed spatial cage. "Hold still," Strange commanded coolly, his sharp gray eyes focused on the shimmering, transparent ripple hovering 5 feet above the canyon floor. "I am sealing the primary entry point, but your final display of kinetic force didn't just break the mirror dimension's internal geometry. It left localized stress fractures in the fabric of this world." Goku pushed himself up onto his elbows with a heavy grunt, wiping a trail of dried blood from his jawline. "Stress fractures? You mean like cracks in the sky?" "Precisely," Strange replied, turning his palms outward. "ZZZZZT." A fine line of golden eldritch sparks zipped across the air like a burning needle, sewing together a jagged 3-foot fissure that was softly reflecting the inverted silhouette of a distant, alien star system. "When you unleashed that dragon fist while maintaining a localized dimensional overload," Strange explained, his crimson cloak fluttering against a sudden unnatural breeze, "you forced 2 distinct dimensional frameworks to occupy the exact same spatial coordinates. The mirror dimension has collapsed back into its subspatial layer, but the atmospheric pressure differential between our realms is causing localized bleed-through." Goku sat up fully, wincing as his fractured ribs gave a sharp, dull throb. "Bleed-through? So stuff from that mirror place can still leak out here." "Or worse," Strange said, lowering his hands as the golden sparks died down. "Entities from other realities caught in the interdimensional slipstream can find these fractures and slip into your universe. Look up." Goku tilted his head back, squinting against the bright afternoon sun. High above the wastelands, scattered across the deep blue vault of the Earth's atmosphere, were dozens of faint, shimmering glass-like prisms floating silently in the sky. To an ordinary human on the ground, they might have looked like strange cloud formations or sun halos. But through Goku's heightened perception, each prism was a microscopic lens showing a different distorted reality. A dying red giant star, an ocean world of neon green fluid, and a metropolis built entirely of gleaming silver spires. "Whoa," Goku breathed, his dark eyes wide as he tracked the floating prisms. "It looks like a bunch of tiny windows." "Windows with broken latches," Strange remarked dryly, adjusting the high collar of his cloak. "If a high-energy signature hits one of those prisms, it will shatter the barrier, tearing open a stable wormhole directly onto your planet." Section II, the unwelcome arrival. Before Goku could ask how they were going to patch dozens of sky fractures, a sudden, crushing surge of raw pressure slammed down onto the canyon. Boom! The ground beneath their boots trembled violently. Dust and loose pebbles drifted upward, floating weightlessly in midair as an immense, jagged blue aura ignited on a high plateau half a mile away. Goku blinked, a familiar chuckle escaping his throat despite his aching ribs. Looks like somebody felt the energy spike. A blinding streak of cobalt light cut through the air at hypersonic speed, coming to a dead stop 10 feet from where Goku and Strange stood. The sudden displacement of air created a sonic boom that echoed off the canyon walls, kicking up a massive cloud of red dust. As the dust settled, a familiar broad-shouldered figure stepped forward. He wore a dark blue jumpsuit underneath white armor plates, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his dark spiky hair standing straight up, and his forehead creased in a fierce, furious scowl. "Kakarot," Vegeta bellowed, his dark eyes flashing with intense irritation. "What in the hell have you been doing?" Your Kai vanished completely for hours, and then suddenly a massive, distorted spike of God energy erupted right here in the wastelands. Vegeta's eyes flicked from Goku's shredded, blood-soaked gi to the tall, cloak-wearing stranger standing beside him. His scowl deepened, his eyebrows twitching with deep suspicion. "And who is this circus performer?" Vegeta growled, his right hand dropping loosely to his side, his thumb hovering near his waist in an instinctively aggressive posture. He doesn't have a single drop of martial Kai, yet the space around his hands smells like burnt ozone. "Hey, Vegeta," Goku waved a bruised hand casually, totally unfazed by his rival's hostile tone. "Relax, this is Dr. Strange. He's a magic doctor from, well, another version of Earth, I think." "Sorcerer Supreme," Strange corrected politely, though his tone carried a new, unmistakable edge of authority as he met Vegeta's glare without flinching. "And I suggest you lower your power output, Prince of Saiyans. The localized reality layer in this quadrant is extremely fragile. Flaring your aura like a petulant child will only accelerate the collapse of those spatial prisms above us." Vegeta's eyes narrowed into slits, a vein bulging on his temple. "Petulant child." "Bzzzzzt." Sparks of golden electricity crackled around Vegeta's boots as his temper flared. "I don't care what kind of trickster magic you practice, wizard. You are standing on my planet, explaining nothing, while space itself looks like a cracked mirror." "Vegeta, wait!" Goku pushed himself to his feet, stepping between the two men with his hands raised placatingly. "He's telling the truth. I got trapped inside a crazy place called the Mirror Dimension, and if Strange hadn't helped me figure out how the magic worked, I'd still be locked in there getting punched by mirror clones." "Mirror clones?" Vegeta repeated, his aura settling slightly, though his glare remained locked on Strange. "You got trapped in an interdimensional cage? How?" "It wasn't an attack," Strange explained, gesturing toward the sky. "It was an interdimensional convergence. A rift opened between our multiversal sectors, and your friend's absurdly dense energy profile acted as a lightning rod. But we have a far more immediate problem than explaining the mechanics of spatial geometry." Strange pointed two fingers toward a cluster of 3 large glass prisms hovering low over the western ridge of the canyon. The prisms were glowing, not with the soft, passive light of reflected sunlight, but with a harsh, surging crimson pulse that matched the rhythm of a heavy, pounding heartbeat. "Section III, the Crimson Resonance." "They're reacting to your arrival," Strange said, his gray eyes narrowing as he analyzed the crimson pulses. The moment Vegeta flared his Super Saiyan aura, the kinetic vibration traveled directly up the local stress lines, feeding energy into the weakest fractures. Crack! A sound like thunder echoing through a sheet of metal echoed from the western ridge. One of the floating prisms split down the middle, a wide, jagged tier of pitch-black darkness expanding into the sky. From inside the dark tier, a cold, suffocating pressure spilled out into the wastelands. It wasn't the clean, intense pressure of Saiyan Kai, nor the refined elegance of God energy. It was a heavy, stagnant, oppressive malice that smelled of sulfur, dried blood, and ancient decay. "What is that?" Vegeta muttered, his combat instincts instantly overriding his anger toward Strange. He dropped into his classic Saiyan stance, his knees bent low, his right fist pulled back against his hip. "That, Kai, it's completely alien. It doesn't belong to any universe I've ever felt." "It isn't Kai," Strange stated, stepping forward as his crimson cloak of levitation billowed outward, 2 glowing golden Tau mandalas igniting over his forearms. "It is an interdimensional entity that feeds on spatial instability. It was drawn to the rift caused by Goku's battle." From the black tier in the sky, 6 massive, multi-jointed limbs made of dark, crystalline glass extended into the Earth's atmosphere, gripping the edges of the canyon walls with a screech that made the rocks vibrate. A giant, geometric nightmare, resembling a massive spider constructed from dark obsidian mirrors, pulled itself out of the rift, its central core glowing with a single, burning red eye. "A spatial devourer," Strange warned, his voice grave. "It anchors itself to reality tiers and widens them until the entire local space collapses into the void." Goku looked up at the towering glass monster, then over at Vegeta, a familiar, fearless grin spreading across his bruised face despite his exhaustion. "Well, Vegeta," Goku chuckled, cracking his knuckles with a sharp clack. "Looks like we've got one more warm-up before we can call it a day." Vegeta smirked, his dark eyes sparkling with ruthless Saiyan pride as a blinding flash of golden light erupted around his body. "Don't get in my way, Kakarot," Vegeta sneered, transforming instantly into a Super Saiyan. "I'll smash this glass bug to pieces in 10 seconds. The shattered eclipse. The spatial devourer crested the western ridge of the canyon, its 6 colossal obsidian legs sinking 3 feet deep into the solid sandstone. Every time its crystalline joints locked, a high-pitched, metallic screech echoed across the valley, vibrating the dust off the canyon walls. The single geometric crimson eye in the center of its jagged torso pulsed violently, casting an eerie red haze over the wasteland. Above the creature, the spatial fracture widened. The sky behind it didn't show the blue Earth atmosphere, but an endlessly churning, pitch-black void filled with floating geometric shards and dead stars. "It's anchoring," Dr. Strange shouted, his voice cutting through. The rising wind as his crimson cloak of levitation billowed around his shoulders. "The creature's mass is binding to the stress fracture. If its central eye locks onto the Earth's tectonic ley lines, it will pull this entire continent into the subspatial void." "It can try," Vegeta sneered. Without waiting for a tactical plan, the Prince of Saiyans exploded off the canyon floor. A blinding streak of golden Super Saiyan light cut through the air, crossing the half-mile distance in a fraction of a heartbeat. Vegeta brought his right fist down in a brutal, falling hammer blow directly onto the monster's central red eye. Thwack clang. The impact sounded like a wrecking ball hitting a solid sheet of tempered steel. A violent shockwave blasted outward, flattening 100 yards of sandstone beneath the creature. But the spatial devourer didn't flinch. The crimson eye didn't shatter. Instead, the surface of the obsidian lens rippled like liquid mercury. The kinetic energy of Vegeta's blow was instantly absorbed into the creature's shell. A split second later, 3 of its razor-sharp obsidian legs swept forward, cutting through the air with 0 travel time. "What?" Vegeta's dark eyes widened in shock. Slash. Vegeta threw his forearms up into a tight cross block, but the spatial edge of the monster's legs didn't just hit his armor. It sliced cleanly through his Super Saiyan aura barrier, leaving 3 deep, bleeding gashes across his chest armor before hurling him backward through 2 rock pillars. Boom, boom. "Vegeta," Goku called out, taking a quick step forward, but his knees buckled slightly as his fractured ribs reminded him of his physical limits. "I told you," Strange yelled, hovering up beside Goku as golden Tau mandalas ignited over both of his palms. Physical attacks using standard kinetic energy feed its shell. It is composed of the same non-Euclidean mirror geometry as the realm you just escaped. Every punch you throw at it simply expands its spatial footprint. Vegeta erupted from the rubble of the second pillar, his golden aura crackling with violent blue sparks of irritation. He wiped a streak of blood from his cheek with the back of his white glove, his dark eyes burning with ruthless fury. "Shut up, wizard," Vegeta roared, levitating back into the air. "I don't care if it's made of glass, magic, or dark matter. Everything breaks if you hit it with enough heat." Vegeta pulled both of his hands back to his sides, his fingers clawed, his feet planted firmly in midair. The air temperature around him spiked by thousands of degrees as a massive, golden sphere of raw, concentrated Kai began to expand around his body. "Final," Vegeta chanted, his teeth bared in a vicious snarl. "Vegeta, no," Goku yelled, raising his hand. "Don't fire a heavy Kai blast at that thing. It'll bounce back into the sky rifts." "Shut up, Kakarot," Vegeta screamed, bringing his palms together in front of his chest. Flash. Section V, the Mirror's Trap. A roaring, miles-wide torrent of brilliant golden energy erupted from Vegeta's hands, tearing across the canyon and swallowing the spatial devourer whole. The sheer heat of the final flash turned the sandstone canyon floor into a glowing trench of molten glass. Boom! The golden beam struck the creature full on, but instead of incinerating the monster, the spatial devourer's crimson eye flared with blinding intensity. The giant obsidian spider opened its central torso, exposing a cavernous interior made of interlocking, mirror-like hexagonal plates. The final flash didn't explode against the creature, it was channeled inside it. The monster's 6 legs locked into the canyon floor as it absorbed the full force of Vegeta's ultimate attack. The hexagonal plates inside its chest began to spin at supersonic speeds, refracting the golden energy, compressing it, and turning it from bright yellow to a volatile, dark crimson hue. "Calculations failing," Strange muttered, his gray eyes wide as he analyzed the spell matrix forming inside the beast. "It isn't just absorbing the energy, it's using the power to construct a localized spatial collapse." The spatial devourer raised its front 2 legs into the air, let out a soundless roar, and redirected Vegeta's compressed final flash straight up into the floating glass prisms above the valley. Swoosh! The dark red beam hit the sky fractures. Crack, shatter. The 3 low-hanging glass prisms exploded inward. The sky above the wastelands tore open for 3 miles in every direction, revealing a swirling, violent vortex of subspatial dark matter that began pulling the surrounding air, clouds, and rock pillars upward like a giant cosmic vacuum. "Damn it!" Vegeta barked, forced to flare his aura just to keep his boots pinned to the ground as the rising gravity vacuum tried to yank him into the sky rift. "I warned you," Strange bellowed over the deafening roar of the spatial storm. His crimson cloak levitation flapped wildly as he thrust both hands toward the sky, casting a massive, glowing golden shield of the Seraphim to cover Goku and himself from the falling debris. "Its body is a spatial amplifier. You just gave it enough fuel to tear this entire quadrant out of reality." Goku stood beneath Strange's golden shield, his hands on his knees, breathing heavily as he watched the sky collapse. His body was battered, his Kai reserves were dangerously low, and his friend's raw power had just accelerated the catastrophe. "Strange," Goku panted, looking up at the sorcerer with calm, determined eyes. "Can your magic stop that big hole from pulling everything in?" "I can cast the images of Icon to confuse its central core, and use the bands of Sitorak to physically bind its legs," Strange replied sharply, his hands moving in rapid, fluid, geometric patterns. "But I cannot seal a rift of that scale while the creature is actively fueling it with your friend's energy. I need its core exposed and its spatial anchor severed." "Got it," Goku said softly. He didn't look at his injuries. He didn't complain about his aching ribs. He simply closed his eyes, took a deep, rhythmic breath, and reached deep into his soul for the quiet, serene flame of God Kai. Section VI, the harmony of magic and might. WOSH. A smooth, tranquil, magenta-red aura ignited around Goku's battered frame. His hair shifted from black to deep ruby red, his posture becoming light, fluid, and refined. "Super Saiyan God." "Kakarot?" Vegeta called out, landing beside them, his face pale as he felt the sudden shift in Goku's energy profile. "You can barely stand. What is Super Saiyan God going to do against a shell that absorbs Kai?" "It doesn't absorb God Kai the same way, Vegeta," Goku explained, a calm smirk returning to his face. "God Kai doesn't push against space, it flows through it. And if Strange binds it with magic, I can inject my energy directly into its core joints to stop the refraction." Dr. Strange looked at Goku, a nod of mutual understanding passing between the sorcerer and the Saiyan warrior. "On my mark," Strange commanded, floating out from under his shield into the roaring wind of the spatial rift. Strange crossed his wrists, his thumbs forming the eye symbol as he unleashed his ancient mystic arts. Crimson bands of Sitorak. Thick, glowing bands of indestructible, blood-red magical energy erupted from Strange's hands, shooting across the canyon like living serpents. The bands wrapped tightly around the spatial devourer's 6 obsidian legs, binding them to the canyon rock and forcing the monster down onto its knees with a deafening clang. Screch! The monster thrashed violently, but the mystic bands held firm, locking its spatial anchors in place. Vegeta, now! Strange yelled, his gray eyes glowing with eldritch light. Use your power to pin its upper joints. Do not fire at the chest. Vegeta didn't need to be told twice. Understanding the tactical shift instantly, the Saiyan Prince transformed into Super Saiyan Blue, his brilliant Saiyan aura crackling with god-level pressure. Bub! Vegeta appeared directly above the monster's head, bringing both of his heavy boots down onto its shoulder plates with enough divine weight to fracture the rock beneath the beast, pinning its upper torso immobile. Kakarot, do it now! Vegeta roared, holding the monster down with his sheer god strength. Goku moved. He didn't charge a Kamehameha. He didn't flare a giant or a storm. In his Super Saiyan God form, Goku floated forward gracefully, slipping past the thrashing spatial limbs like a red leaf floating on a river breeze. He landed lightly on the monster's chest, right in front of the spinning hexagonal mirror plates of its exposed core. Goku extended 2 fingers on his right hand, coating them in a thin, super-compressed layer of Crimson God Kai. Strange, Goku called out over his shoulder. Hit the core with your golden ring magic right when I touch it. The Tau Mandala resonance, Strange realized instantly. A harmonic feedback loop. Dr. Strange swept his hand in a wide circle, firing a dense, burning ring of golden eldritch magic directly into Goku's back. The golden magic hit Goku, not hurting him, but wrapping around his arm and combining with his Crimson Super Saiyan God Kai. The fusion of pure earth magic and divine Saiyan energy turned Goku's fingertips into a brilliant, sparkling point of orange-gold light. Goku drove his 2 fingers straight into the central hexagonal mirror plate. Ping! A sound like a massive crystal bell echoed across the entire planet. The combined harmonic frequency of God Kai and mystic arts didn't shatter the spatial devourer's glass body. It short-circuited its spatial geometry. The dark red energy trapped inside the creature's core turned to pure, sparkling gold. The 6 obsidian legs dissolved into harmless silver dust, and the central crimson eye shattered into Milio. NS of glowing, weightless bubbles that drifted upward into the sky rift. Now, Strange, Goku yelled, pulling his fingers back. Close the door. Dr. Strange hovered high above the valley, raising both hands toward the massive 3-mile sky tier. The eye of Agamotto on his chest flared with brilliant emerald green light as he swept his arms inward in a magnificent, sweeping arc. By the power of Vishanti, seal the void. A wave of pure emerald temporal and spatial magic swept across the sky. The floating glass prisms, the dark matter vortex, and the 3-mile tier in reality were pulled back together like a zipper, snapping shut with a soft, quiet pop. The sky returned to a crisp, clear, blue afternoon. The wind died down. The sun shone warm and bright over the wastelands. Section VII, Arrested Multiverse. Thud. Goku dropped out of Super Saiyan God back into his base form, collapsing backward onto his rear in the soft red sand. He let out a long, wheezing breath, his body finally giving up its last drop of energy. Man, Goku wheezed, staring up at the clear sky with a wide, exhausted grin. That was an awesome fight. Vegeta dropped down beside him, reverting to his base form and crossing his arms tightly over his chest. He looked at his torn gloves, then over at Dr. Strange, who was landing gracefully on the ground nearby, adjusting his crimson cloak. HMPH, Vegeta grunted, turning his head away. An overly complicated bug. I could have vaporized it if Kakarot hadn't gotten in the way. You would have vaporized this continent, Prince Vegeta, Strange replied coolly, though a subtle, respectful nod accompanied his words. Though I will admit, your raw output is unlike anything I have cataloged in the Sanctum's archives. Strange walked over to Goku, looking down at the battered Saiyan. He reached into his robes and pulled out a small, crystal vial filled with a glowing, pale green elixir, tossing it down to Goku. "What's this?" Goku asked, catching the vial with his bruised hands. "Magic juice." "A restoration draft brewed from the roots of the Watum trees," Strange explained. "It won't heal your broken ribs instantly. Your friends, Senzu beans, sound far more efficient, but it will stabilize your internal energy and clear the spatial feedback from your soul." Goku uncapped the vial and downed it in one gulp. Instantly, a warm, soothing sensation washed through his chest, taking the sharp edge off his pain. "Ah, thanks, sorcerer guy," Goku grinned, pushing himself up onto his feet with a stretch that made his back pop loudly. "Hey, if you ever want to spar or practice some more of that cool magic stuff, you know where to find me." "I sincerely hope I do not have to find you again, Son Goku," Strange smirked dryly, raising his right hand to slip his bronze sling ring onto his fingers. "Every time you stretch your muscles, reality itself seems to require a patch." Dr. Strange swept his hand in a smooth, practiced circle in front of him. "Bzzzzzzzzzt." A brilliant, burning ring of golden eldritch sparks ignited in the desert air, revealing the quiet, dimly lit, book-lined interior of the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York City. Strange stepped up to the portal's edge, turning his head back one last time to look at the two Saiyans standing in the red dust of Earth. "Keep your universe intact, warriors," Strange said smoothly, his crimson cloak of levitation settling. "I have enough paperwork as it is." With a final wave of his hand, Dr. Strange stepped through the portal, and the golden ring snapped shut, vanishing into the warm desert air without a trace. Vegeta watched the empty space where the portal had been for a long moment before turning to Goku with a sharp glare. "Come on, Kakarot," Vegeta grunted, turning on his heel. "Capsule Corp is holding a dinner tonight, and if you think I'm letting you eat all the meat while you're covered in magic bandages, you're dead wrong." Goku laughed, placing his hands behind his head as he walked alongside his rival across the quiet canyon floor. "Haha, deal, Vegeta. First one to Capsule Corp gets the biggest stake." The quiet after the tempest. 3 days had passed since the sky above the wastelands was stitched closed. On the isolated, grassy peak of Mount Pauzu, where the air was thin and smelled of pine resin and damp mountain soil, Son Goku sat cross-legged atop a flat granite boulder. His upper body was bare save for crisp white medical bandages wrapped tightly around his midsection, securing the 3 broken ribs that were still mending under the steady, quiet warmth of his Saiyan biology. Below the plateau, the distant smoke of Kai-Kai's kitchen fire drifted lazily into the afternoon clouds. But up here, Goku was entirely still. He was not punching tree trunks into splinters. He was not wearing weighted wristbands or doing one-armed push-ups on the edge of a cliff. His hands rested loosely on his knees, palm. Turned upward toward the sun, his fingers uncurled and relaxed. His breathing was so slow, so shallow, that a yellow butterfly landed softly on the tip of his wild, spiky dark hair, completely unaware that the man beneath it possessed enough kinetic force to shatter a moon. "It wasn't a wall," Goku whispered to himself, his eyes remaining closed, his voice barely disturbing the air around his lips. "The glass wasn't a wall." In the total darkness behind his eyelids, Goku was replaying every microsecond of his battle inside the mirror dimension. He recalled the exact feeling of his fist hitting the space around Dr. Strange's cage. When he had thrown a standard, high-impact Super Saiyan punch, his energy had behaved like a heavy rock thrown into a pond. It created massive, chaotic waves of kinetic force that rebounded off the boundaries and returned with equal violence. But when he had tapped the containment rune using the compressed, tranquil thread of Super Saiyan God Kai, the energy hadn't splashed. It had slipped into the molecular weave of the magic, vibrating at a frequency that made the spell unspool without resistance. When Wise teaches us, Goku thought, his mind drifting back to the marble courtyards of Lord Beerus's planet, he keeps saying our Kai leaks out because we treat power like a weapon we're swinging. We throw it at things, but magic guys, they don't throw energy, they tune it. Ping! A subtle, microscopic pulse of red God, Kai ignited at the tip of Goku's right index finger. The butterfly on his hair didn't startle. The grass around the boulder didn't rustle. There was no roaring aura, no crackle of golden electricity, no spike in atmospheric temperature. The tiny flame of crimson energy sitting on his fingernail was completely silent, compressed so tightly that its external spatial signature was absolute zero. Goku opened his eyes. His dark pupils were calm, reflecting the deep, ruby-red glow resting on his fingertip. 10 feet in front of his boulder stood an ancient, weathered oak tree. Its trunk was thick, at least 4 feet across, and its dark bark was hardened by decades of mountain storms. Goku didn't draw his hand back to throw a blast. He didn't build up kinetic momentum. He simply extended his right index finger toward the oak tree and flicked his wrist softly, releasing the compressed drop of God Kai across the 10-foot gap. Section II, the silent drill. The drop of divine energy didn't travel like a standard Kai blast. It didn't burn a bright line through the air, nor did it leave a trailing tail of smoke or light. It moved like a ripple traveling across the surface of a still lake. As the crimson droplet crossed the 10 feet of open air, the air itself didn't displace. It resonated. A soft, musical chime, like a crystal glass struck by a silver needle, hummed through the clearing. Tink! The crimson drop touched the outer bark of the ancient oak tree. There was no explosion, no roaring fireball, no flying splinters, no cloud of wood dust. The outer bark wasn't even scorched. Goku lowered his hand, his red aura fading back into his body as he slid off the granite boulder and walked over to the tree. He placed his bare palm flat against the rough brown bark right where the drop of Kai had landed. He pressed gently with his thumb. Crumble. The outer bark remained perfectly intact, but the entire internal hardwood core of the 4-foot-thick tree, the dense, solid rings built over 100 years, had been converted into a fine, weightless, silky flower. The divine energy hadn't smashed the wood fibers. It had matched the vibrational frequency of the cellulose bonds, vibrating them so rapidly that the internal structure dissolved while leaving the outer shell completely untouched. Goku pulled his hand back, watching a thin stream of white wood flower spill out of a microscopic hole in the bark like sand from an hourglass. Heh, Goku smiled, a spark of genuine childlike excitement gleaming in his eyes. It worked. The force went right through the outside without touching it and only hit the inside. Impressive precision, Kakarot, though I doubt a tree is going to fight back. Goku turned his head. Standing on the edge of the clearing, leaning against a mossy rock with his arms crossed tightly over his chest, was Vegeta. The Saiyan prince was dressed in a clean, dark gray training gi, his sharp hairline framed by the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. He had been standing there in absolute silence for nearly 20 minutes, watching Goku's quiet meditation with his usual scowling intensity. Vegeta, Goku grinned, rubbing the back of his neck. How long have you been standing there? I didn't even feel your Kai. That's because I wasn't leaking any, idiot, Vegeta grunted, stepping out from the shade of the trees. His dark eyes flicked from the intact outer bark of the oak to the stream of fine wood flour spilling onto the grass. You're trying tea. Oh, replicate that trick the wizard used to break the spatial construct, aren't you? It's not just a trick, Goku said, his tone turning thoughtful as he looked down at his gloved hand. When I was locked in that mirror dimension, every time I hit something with normal force, the realm used my own strength to build a bigger wall. If I threw a punch that could destroy a planet, the mirror just made a shield that could absorb a planet. Goku looked up, meeting Vegeta's sharp gaze. If we ever fight someone who uses spatial magic or dimension folding like that again, brute force is just gonna get us killed. We have to learn how to make our Kai pass through the shield before we let the power out. Section III, the principle of resonance. Vegeta walked up to the oak tree, extending a gloved finger to tap the outer bark. The shell held firm, but the hollow sound confirmed that the core was completely gone. HMPH? Vegeta sneered, though his eyes betrayed his tactical interest. Standard Kai control focuses on compression and release. You pull energy into a single point, build kinetic pressure, and release it outward to cause physical destruction. What you're doing here is the opposite. You're matching the frequency of the target before you release the energy. Yeah, Goku nodded enthusiastically. That's it. Dr. Strange called it harmonic resonance. He said everything in the universe, rocks, air, magic, even our bodies, is made of little tiny vibrations. If you make your God Kai vibrate at the exact same speed as what you're touching, your energy doesn't hit it. It slides right inside. Vegeta crossed his arms again, turning his body slightly. And how do you propose tuning Divine Kai to match something that is constantly shifting? A fighter isn't a stationary oak tree, Kakarot. In a real battle, an opponent's Kai frequency shifts with every breath, every movement, every transformation. That's why we have to practice on each other. Goku grinned, stepping into his classic turtle school stance, his knees bent low, his hands open and relaxed. Come on, Vegeta. Give me a soft strike in Super Saiyan Blue, but try to keep your aura locked inside. Vegeta's eyebrows twitched, a vicious, competitive smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. A soft strike, Vegeta sneered, his dark eyes flashing with dangerous pride. I don't do soft, Kakarot. WOSH. Without a second of warning, a blinding aura of brilliant Saiyan light erupted around Vegeta's frame. The grass for 30 yards around them was instantly vaporized by the sheer pressure of Super Saiyan Blue. Vegeta didn't charge forward with a loud roar. He moved with cold, lethal efficiency, closing the 10-foot gap in a fraction of a microsecond, driving a straight, concentrated God fist straight toward Goku's chest. Let's see your vibrational frequency stop this, Vegeta barked. Goku didn't dodge. He didn't drop into a heavy block. He closed his eyes, dropped his Super Saiyan Blue transformation completely, and flared a thin, paper-thin layer of Super Saiyan God Crimson Light skin-tight against his chest. Ping! Vegeta's fist struck Goku square in the sternum. There was no explosive shockwave. The mountain didn't shake, the trees didn't bend. Vegeta's eyes went wide as he felt his compressed Saiyan God Kai hit Goku's chest and slide completely off. The kinetic force of his punch didn't transfer into Goku's ribs. It was redirected downward along the crimson vibrational lines of Goku's aura, shooting straight into the mountain beneath their feet. Boom! A mile away at the base of Mount Paozu, a massive 30-foot crater exploded out of the uninhabited valley rock as the redirected kinetic energy exited the mountain. Goku stood his ground, unbruised, unbothered, his crimson aura humming softly as he opened his ruby-red eyes with a warm, fearless smile. Not bad, Vegeta, Goku chuckled smoothly. Now let me try tuning into yours. The harmony of fire and ice. The clearing at the summit of Mount Paozu was completely dead quiet. The redirected kinetic force of Vegeta's punch was still echoing through the distant valleys below. But up on the plateau, the two Saiyans stood barely 3 feet apart, locked in a silent exchange of divine pressure. Vegeta pulled his fist back from Goku's sternum, his dark eyebrows pulled down into a sharp, analytical scowl. He looked at his white-gloved knuckles, then up into Goku's calm, ruby-red eyes. You didn't absorb the impact, Vegeta said softly, his voice carrying the cold, tactical precision of a veteran commander. You altered the local spatial density of your body at the exact microsecond of contact. You turned your chest into a conduit, letting my kinetic vector pass through your mass and into the ground. Yeah, Goku grinned, stepping back and shaking out his shoulders. It's like turning your body into water for just a split second. If you try to hold a rigid wall, a heavy punch breaks it. But if why? Our aura vibrates at the same speed as the attack coming at you. The punch just slides right down the stream. A fluid aura, Vegeta mused, his Saiyan Super Saiyan Blue aura shrinking until it formed a tight, dense shimmer over his skin, matching Goku's compressed state. Standard God Kai relies on absolute containment, keeping the power from leaking out. But what you're doing requires dynamic tuning. You have to read the exact frequency of the incoming strike before it makes physical contact. That's the hard part, Goku admitted, scratching the back of his neck with a chuckle. If I guess wrong, or if you change your Kai frequency right before you hit me, I take the full impact on my bare ribs. Vegeta's eyes flashed with a dangerous, competitive glint. A vicious smirk touched the corner of his mouth. Then you had better not guess wrong, Kakarot. Swoosh. Vegeta moved. There was no telegraphing, no wide wind-up, no flare of light. Using the refined, frictionless movement he had perfected under Wise, Vegeta slipped inside Goku's guard, launching a high-speed three-strike combination. A low left jab aimed at the liver, a rising right chop targeted at the collarbone, and a sweeping reverse heel kick meant to take Goku's head off. Goku didn't step back. He didn't raise his arms into a hard double block. He dropped into the flow of the vibrational state. As Vegeta's left jab drove toward his ribs, Goku didn't match the speed of the fist. He matched the vibrational pitch of Vegeta's Saiyan God Kai. Ping! The left jab slipped past Goku's side, the kinetic force sliding harmlessly off his crimson aura. Ping! The rising chop brushed past Goku's shoulder, the divine pressure venting upward into the sky as a harmless plume of red steam. Ping! Goku dipped his head under the sweeping heel kick, feeling the scorching heat of Vegeta's aura graze his dark hair without transferring a single ounce of kinetic weight into his skull. Again, Vegeta barked, his combat instincts ignited. Vegeta didn't slow down, he accelerated, but instead of simply throwing harder punches, he began shifting his Kai frequency mid-strike. He converted his Saiyan aura from dense compression to wild, explosive heat mid-flight, constantly altering the vibrational signature of his knuckles to break Goku's tuning. Thwack! A sharp left hook caught Goku square on the jaw, sending him skidding 5 feet across the dirt, a drop of blood flying from his lip. Gah! Goku wiped his chin, his ruby eyes sparkling with absolute joy. Nice, you changed the pitch right when your elbow snapped. Of course I did, Vegeta sneered, his hands open, his fingers clawed as his aura crackled with high-frequency blue sparks. A real enemy isn't going to hold a single tone for you to harmonize with. If you want to master this, you have to read the shift before the fist even leaves the shoulder. Right, Goku laughed, dropping low into his stance. My turn to attack. Section V, the Heavenly Observer. The two Saiyans surged forward, colliding in the center of the clearing. They didn't unleash world-ending energy blasts or shatter the mountain range. To an ordinary observer on the ground, it would have looked like two martial artists practicing a remarkably quiet, lightning-fast spar. But to anyone capable of perceiving God Kai, the peak of Mount Paozu was the center of an extraordinary phenomenon. Red and cyan light flickered in microscopic pulses. Every time their fists met, there was no explosive boom, only a series of sharp, musical pings that sounded like crystal goblets ringing in a quiet room. The kinetic force of their battle was continuously rooted harmlessly into the deep tectonic roots of the earth, leaving the grass and trees of the mountain completely pristine and untouched. High above the peak, suspended silently in the upper atmosphere where the blue of the sky bled into the black of space, a tall, slender figure stood resting his weight on a long wooden staff topped with a glowing, floating orb. Wise tilted his head, his pale violet eyes shining with quiet, genuine amusement as he looked down through his staff's crystal orb at the two Saiyans sparring below. My, Wise hummed softly, his voice melodic and light. What an unexpected development. Beside him, sleeping fitfully inside a floating, purple-upholstered orbital chair, Lord Beerus shifted, letting out a loud, snorting yawn that scratched the quiet of the stratosphere. The god of destruction rubbed his golden eyes with the back of his clawed hand, blinking sleepily at the planet below. HRNGH, Wise, Beerus grumbled, his long ears twitching. What is that annoying ringing sound? It sounds like someone tapping a spoon against my tea set. Are those two apes breaking things again? Far from it, Lord Beerus, Wise chuckled, tapping his staff gently against the air. In fact, they are doing quite the opposite. They are fighting without breaking a single blade of grass. Beerus squinted through his sleepiness, looking down through the crystal orb at Goku and Vegeta. He watched as Goku executed a short-range palm strike that passed directly through the outer aura of Vegeta's blue form. tapping Vegeta's chest plate and causing a tiny, localized ripple of crimson light to pass straight through the prince's body without knocking him backward. Beerus's dark pupils shrunk slightly. His sleepiness vanished instantly, replaced by a sharp, feline intensity. That wasn't a standard Kai strike, Beerus noted, his voice dropping into a serious, authoritative register. Goku didn't push his energy outward. He matched Vegeta's density and slipped past his defensive barrier entirely. Indeed, Wise smiled, his staff casting a soft halo of white light around them. It appears Goku's unexpected detour into the mirror dimension yielded a rather fascinating insight. He has begun to grasp the concept of harmonic spatial penetration, a technique typically reserved for deity-level magic practitioners and higher-dimensional guardians. Immortal learning magic principles? Beerus huffed, crossing his thin purple arms over his chest. HMPH. Magic is sloppy. It relies on incantations and complex geometry. Real power comes from absolute destruction. Normally, yes, Wise corrected gently. However, Goku isn't using magic spells, my lord. He is using the principles of magic to refine his application of God Kai. Instead of using force to break a barrier, he is using resonance to render the barrier meaningless. Wise tapped his staff twice. A soft bell chimed from the floating orb. I believe it is time we paid our students a little visit, Wise said smoothly. If they continue tuning their energy like this on Earth, they might accidentally learn how to slip through the boundaries of time itself. And we wouldn't want them causing any extra paperwork for the Grand Minister, would we? Section VI, the lesson of the staff. Bob. A bright flash of white divine light ignited in the center of the Mount Paozu clearing, interrupting Goku and Vegeta mid-exchange. Goku pulled his fist back, dropping instantly out of Super Saiyan God, while Vegeta backed off 2 paces, his Saiyan aura vanishing as he crossed his arms, his scowl returning full force. Wise, Goku grinned, wiping the sweat from his forehead with his forearm. Lord Beerus, what are you guys doing here? Did Kai make too much food again? We came because you two are making a most unusual noise, Beerus growled, stepping down from his floating chair and landing lightly on the mountain grass. He scratched behind his ear, eyeing Goku with deep suspicion. Goku, where did you learn that trick with your palms? Goku looked at his gloved hand, then chuckled sheepishly. Oh, you mean the vibrational stuff? Well, I got trapped inside this crazy mirror place a few days ago, and a wizard named Dr. Strange showed me how magic works. I realized that if I stop punching against energy and start tuning into it, I can get past shields without using a huge blast. Vegeta stepped forward, his tone sharp and proud. It isn't just for shields, Lord Beerus. By matching the frequency of an attack, we can disperse the kinetic impact entirely, routing the force away from our vital organs. Wise floated down beside them, his staff resting lightly against his palm. His expression was warm, but his eyes carried the sharp, unyielding wisdom of an angel who had observed the universe for millions of years. A commendable realization, Goku, Wise said smoothly. However, you are currently only executing half of the equation. Goku blinked, tilting his head. Half. Allow me to demonstrate, Wise smiled. Without a sound, Wise raised his wooden staff, holding it vertically in front of his chest with a single hand. He didn't flare an aura. He didn't assume a combat stance. He simply stood there, relaxed and serene. Strike my staff, Goku, Wise instructed gently. Use your new vibrational God Kai. Try to pass your energy through the wood and touch my hand on the other side. Goku's eyes lit up with excitement. All right, don't hold back. WOSH. Goku transformed instantly into Super Saiyan God, his ruby aura blazing with smooth, quiet heat. He focused every ounce of his awareness, reading the ambient frequency of Wise's staff. He tuned his Kai until the crimson light on his index finger vibrated at the exact, silent pitch of the wood. Here it comes, Goku yelled, driving his finger forward in a precise, lightning-fast thrust aimed directly at the center of Wise's staff. Tink! Goku's finger touched the wooden staff and stopped dead. The vibrational energy didn't pass through the wood. It didn't slip inside. It didn't root into the ground. Instead, the moment Goku's finger made contact, a soft, high-frequency ripple passed back up Goku's arm, causing his entire upper body to numb completely. Goku dropped out of Super Saiyan God instantly, stumbling back re-steps, clutching his right arm as if he had just struck a solid block of unbreakable iron. Goku winced, shaking his numb fingers violently. What was that? I tuned to the wood, the frequency was perfect. Wise chuckled softly, resting his staff against his shoulder. You tuned your energy to match the physical object, Goku, Wise explained, his voice calm and instructive. You matched the wood, but the wood is held together by my Kai. A true master doesn't just tune to what an object looks like on the surface, they tune to the will behind it. Wise looked at both Goku and Vegeta, his expression turning serious. The mirror dimension taught you that space is fluid, Wise spoke softly. Now you must learn that will is absolute. If an opponent's spirit is locked, no amount of vibrational tuning will allow your energy to pass through them. To break a true master's defense, you must tune your energy not to their body, but to their mind. Goku looked at his numbed hand, then up at Wise, a slow, wide, incredible grin spreading across his face. His Saiyan blood was burning hotter than ever. To their mind, Goku repeated softly, his eyes shining. Man, martial arts really is infinite, isn't it? The sacred canopy. The skies above Lord Beerus's planet were an eternal pastel dusk, a serene, violet twilight painted with floating upside-down hourglass mountain ranges, glowing nebulae and ancient, towering trees whose roots reached into the void of deep space. It was a world removed from mortal physics, a realm where time flowed at the whim of its divine inhabitants, and where the ambient pressure of God Kai was so thick that a normal human's lungs would collapse upon inhaling the air. In the center of the vast, white marble courtyard surrounding Lord Beerus's treehouse castle, two figures stood opposite one another. Son Goku and Vegeta wore their heavy, white Wise insignia training gis. The pristine fabric of Goku's gi was already smudged with dark purple dirt from 5 straight hours of brutal conditioning. His dark hair was damp with sweat, hanging in slight clumps over his forehead, but his eyes were wide, glowing with a restless, hungry intensity. A few yards away, Wise hovered 3 inches off the polished marble floor. His long wooden staff rested vertically in the crook of his left arm, his pale violet face calm and unbothered, framed by his halo of silver hair. He held a small, delicate teacup in his right hand, taking a slow, graceful sip as he observed his 2 students. Now then, Wise said, his voice carrying lightly across the quiet courtyard, let us review what you have managed to absorb over the past 3 days. He set his teacup down on a floating, ornate silver tray that hovered beside him in midair. Goku, Wise continued, turning his violet gaze toward the elder Saiyan. When you were trapped within that interdimensional mirror realm, you correctly deduced that brute force against an adaptive barrier is foolish. You learned to adjust your God Kai to match the physical vibrational frequency of an obstacle, allowing your energy to slide through mass rather than smashing against it. Yeah, Goku grinned, stepping forward and shaking out his shoulders. It's like threading a needle, Wise. If the thread is too thick, it gets stuck. But if you make it thin and match the hole, it slides right through. An apt analogy, Wise nodded approvingly. However, as I demonstrated on Earth, physical objects in a fight between gods are rarely unguided. When an opponent guards themselves, their defensive barrier isn't just physical matter. It is an extension of their conscious will. Wise held up his right hand, extending his index finger. A tiny sphere of white, pristine energy ignited at the tip of his fingernail. It didn't radiate heat or crackle with electricity. It sat there, perfectly still, carrying a spiritual weight that made the surrounding marble floor groan softly under the invisible pressure. If you tune your Kai merely to the physical composition of my finger, Wise warned smoothly, your energy will hit the wall of my consciousness and shatter your own bones. To bypass a divine defense, you must perceive the mental frequency of my intent. You must tune your energy to match me. Section II, the Wall of Pure Will. Vegeta stepped forward, his boots clicking sharply against the white stone. His dark eyes were fixed on the tiny white sphere resting on Wise's finger. "Mind tuning isn't a physical martial art," Vegeta grunted, his voice low and tactical. "You're asking us to read the exact spiritual frequency of your thoughts before our strike even lands. That requires dropping all conscious tactical calculation. It's similar to the entry state of Ultra Instinct, but instead of turning inward to our own reflexes, we have to project our awareness entirely into the opponent's mind." "Precisely, Vegeta," Wise beamed, clapping his gloved hands together with delight. "I knew why. O had a sharp mind beneath all that brooding. You cannot think your way through a mind tune. If you try to calculate my intent, your brain will be 3 steps behind my action." Goku dropped low into his turtle school stance. His posture softened completely, his muscles relaxed, his breathing slowing until his chest barely rose and fell. "Let me try first," Goku said quietly, his dark pupils locking onto Wise's floating hand. WOSH. A smooth, tranquil flame of crimson light ignited around Goku's body. Super Saiyan God. Goku didn't flare the aura outward. Following the techniques he had refined on Mount Paozu, he compressed the Crimson God Kai until it formed a paper-thin, glowing second skin over his body. He extended his right hand, forming his fingers into a loose, straight spear hand strike. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, tuning out the soft rustle of the cosmic trees and the gentle hum of the floating mountain ranges. In his mind's eye, Wise wasn't a physical body made of flesh, robes, and silver hair. Wise was a towering, infinitely deep ocean of pure, tranquil intent, a calm, unshakable pillar of consciousness that held no fear, no anger, and no hesitation. There, Goku thought, his mind dipping into the flow of divine perception. I see the rhythm of his spirit. It's like a soft, steady clock ticking at the center of everything. Goku opened his ruby-red eyes. Pup. He vanished. There was no sonic boom, no displacement of air. Goku reappeared directly in front of Wise, his right spear hand driving forward toward the center of Wise's palm with terrifying, mathematical precision. The Crimson God Kai on Goku's fingertips vibrated at a hyper-high frequency, perfectly synchronized with the spiritual pulse he had perceived in Wise's mind. Tink. Goku's fingertips made contact with Wise's open palm. For a microsecond, it worked. Goku's divine energy slipped past the physical skin of Wise's hand, penetrating 2 inches into the spatial layer of the angel's defense without causing an explosion. Got it, Goku's heart leapt. Not quite, Wise whispered gently. In that exact microsecond, without moving his body, Wise's mind shifted. The calm, steady clock-like intent Goku had locked onto instantly changed its spiritual frequency, shifting from tranquil water to the crushing, infinite weight of a falling universe. Crack boom! The mental frequency shift hit, Goku's incoming energy like a freight train hitting a glass marble. The sudden mismatch in spiritual vibration short-circuited Goku's compressed God Kai. The reflected spiritual feedback traveled straight back down Goku's arm, shattering his aura skin barrier and causing every nerve from his fingertips to his shoulder to flare with agonizing, white-hot shocks. Guah! Goku was hurled backward across the courtyard, spinning 4 times through the air before slamming back first into a massive, purple stone pillar at the edge of the arena. Crash! The pillar cracked down the middle as Goku slid down to his knees, dropping out of Super Saiyan God back into his base form, clutching his right shoulder as he panted heavily, hot sweat dripping from his chin onto the white marble floor. Huff, huff, man, Goku wheezed, a painful laugh escaping his throat as he tried to shake the numbness from his arm. He shifted his mind right at the last millisecond. It felt like I tried to step onto a cloud and landed on an anvil. Section III, the prince's calculation. Vegeta didn't laugh. He didn't even look back at Goku. His dark eyes remained fixed on Wise, his sharp brain processing the exact failure of Goku's attempt. Kakarot locked onto your static frequency, Vegeta analyzed, stepping up to the mark Goku had just vacated. He read where your spirit was standing, but he failed to account for where your spirit was moving. You intentionally let him sync with your resting intent so you could switch the frequency at the moment of impact. Spot on, Vegeta, Wise smiled, gently dusting off his palm with a white silk handkerchief. A master's mind is never static. To tune to a true god or an angel, you cannot simply match where their mind is currently resting. You must synchronize with the trajectory of their consciousness. Vegeta closed his eyes. Unlike Goku, who approached the technique through pure instinctual feeling, Vegeta approached it through absolute, cold mastery of God Kai control. WOSH. A blinding, icy blue aura ignited around Vegeta. Super Saiyan Blue. The Saiyan flame flared violently for a single second before Vegeta clamped down on his energy with ruthless discipline. The roaring aura collapsed inward, shrinking until it formed a tight, metallic sheen over his dark gray training gi and white armor plates. "I won't make the same mistake Kakarot did," Vegeta declared, his voice dropping into a low, resonant growl. "I'm not going to follow your mind, Wise. I'm going to anticipate its shift." Vegeta drove. Peeped low into his classic prince's stance, his left hand extended, his right hand pulled back near his jaw. "Here I come." Boom! Vegeta surged forward, crossing the distance with speed that blurred the fabric of local space. He didn't throw a single strike. He threw a rapid, three-part fluid feint. His left fist jabbed toward Wise's eyes, a decoy designed to force Wise's mind into a defensive reaction. As expected, Wise's spiritual frequency shifted to block the upper line. The moment Vegeta felt Wise's mind shift, Vegeta altered his own Kai frequency in real time, abandoning the jab mid-flight and driving a heavy right straight punch toward Wise's ribs, tuning his Saiyan God Kai to match the new defensive frequency Wise had just adopted. "Double syncing," Goku gasped from the edge of the courtyard, holding his sore shoulder as his eyes widened in genuine awe. Vegeta forced Wise to shift his mind and then tuned to the shift. Vegeta's fist drove straight toward Wise's ribs, the Saiyan God Kai vibrating with perfect, harmonious resonance. Tink! Vegeta's fist touched Wise's silk robe. The divine energy slipped straight through the fabric, penetrating past Wise's physical skin. Vegeta's eyes flared with ruthless triumph. He was a millimeter away from transferring his divine kinetic weight directly into Wise's chest. Then Wise smiled. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible curve of the lips. Wise didn't shift his mental frequency to a third state. He did something infinitely worse. He emptied his mind completely. The void of the angel. When Wise emptied his mind, the universe within his frame simply ceased to register a spiritual signature. Vegeta's right fist was moving at near-light speed, his Saiyan God Kai fine-tuned to match the exact defensive trajectory Wise had adopted a millisecond prior. But when Wise dropped his consciousness into total, absolute zero, there was no longer a frequency to tune into. It was like a high-speed train, slamming off a solid bridge and plunging straight into a bottomless, airless abyss. Swoosh! Vegeta's fist didn't hit a wall. It didn't shatter his knuckles, nor did it bounce back with reflected kinetic shockwaves. Instead, his fist passed straight through the space Wise's torso occupied, not because Wise had phase shifted or moved his body away, but because the angel's physical frame had briefly ceased to offer any spatial resistance to an attack expecting a mental target. Overextended by his own immense momentum, Vegeta stumbled forward, his boots skidding across the polished white marble. "What?" Vegeta's dark eyes widened in sheer disbelief as his balance broke completely. "A clever attempt, Vegeta," Wise's voice echoed, not from in front of him but from directly behind his left ear. Before Vegeta could spin around or re-engage his Saiyan aura barrier, Wise executed a simple, effortless flick of his index finger against the back of Vegeta's neck. Tap. The microscopic tap was infused with zero kinetic weight, but it carried the absolute, unshakable authority of an angel's passive state. The shockwave traveled down Vegeta's central nervous system, instantly short-circuiting the neural pathways holding his transformation together. BZZZT. Vegeta's Super Saiyan blue aura shattered like thin ice, dissolving into scattered cyan specks of light. The Prince of Saiyan dropped to one knee, clutching his neck, his chest heaving as he panted heavily against the cold marble floor. "Damn it," Vegeta growled through gritted teeth, his knuckles turning white as he slammed his fist against the stone. "You didn't counter my double sync. You pulled the target away entirely." "Precisely," Wise smiled, turning around gracefully and smoothing down the front of his burgundy robes. "You calculated my shift, Vegeta. It was a brilliant piece of tactical analysis. But you relied on the assumption that my mind must hold a form. When an angel enters absolute quiet, there is no form, no frequency, and no intent to lock onto. Trying to tune your Kai to an empty mind is like trying to catch smoke with a fishnet." Section V, the Red Gamble. From the edge of the courtyard, Goku slowly pushed himself up from the cracked stone pillar. He rolled his right shoulder, wincing slightly as the lingering numbness from his first failed attempt faded from his muscles. He walked back toward the center of the arena, his boots making a soft, steady rhythm against the marble. "An empty mind," Goku murmured, his dark eyes staring at Wise's open, relaxed posture. "When I used Ultra Instinct in the mirror dimension, my body was moving without me thinking about it, but my mind was still there. It was just quiet." Goku stopped 10 feet from Wise. He didn't drop into a defensive guard. He let his arms hang loosely at his sides, his chest rising and falling in deep, rhythmic cycles. "Wise," Goku spoke softly, his voice calm, clear, and stripped of all hesitation. "When you emptied your mind against Vegeta, your body didn't need a frequency because it wasn't trying to fight him. You just let his attack pass through the space." "Correct, Goku," Wise replied, his violet eyes twinkling with keen interest. "So how do you propose striking something that isn't standing anywhere?" "I don't," Goku said smoothly. Goku closed his eyes. WOSH. The quiet, tranquil crimson flame of Super Saiyan God ignited around his body once again. But this time, Goku didn't compress the aura skin tight, nor did he let it flare outward into a wide storm. He held the crimson flame in a delicate, perfectly balanced suspension. Then his deep Saiyan breath hitched. To hit an empty mind, Goku thought, reaching deep into the core of his physical heart. I can't use a single frequency. I need to hit every frequency at once. Goku's eyes snapped open. The calm, ruby-red pupils flared with a sudden, terrifying surge of violent crimson light. Kaioken. Boom! A scorching, dual-layered aura of crimson heat and blood-red Kaioken haze erupted around Goku's frame. The simultaneous overlay placed an instantaneous, crushing strain on his physical body. His veins bulged along his temples and arms, and his mending ribs groaned under the massive spike in internal pressure. Kakarot, you fool! Vegeta barked from the floor, pushing himself up. Stacking Kaioken on Super Saiyan God while trying to perform fine-tune energy control will tear your muscle fibers to shreds. He isn't stacking it for power, Vegeta, Wise noted, his smile fading slightly as his sharp eyes analyzed the violent aura storm around the Saiyan. Look closely at the energy layers. Inside the roaring crimson aura, the god Kai wasn't holding a single, steady vibrational tone. Because the volatile, chaotic nature of the Kaioken was constantly pushing and pulling against the refined, tranquil stability of Super Saiyan God, the energy around Goku was rapidly cycling through thousands of different vibrational frequencies per microsecond. It was a chaotic, high-speed harmonic sweep, a broad-spectrum wave of divine energy vibrating across every frequency at once. If I can't guess where your mind is going, Goku roared over the deafening hum of his aura, I'll just cover every answer on the test. Section VI, the broad-spectrum strike. Goku moved. He didn't use instant transmission. The sheer, violent friction of the Kaioken-infused God Kai pushed against the surrounding atmosphere with such force that the space behind him tore open in a straight, glowing red line. Boom! Goku crossed the 10-foot gap in 0 time, driving a straight, concentrated right punch directly toward the center of Wise's chest. The Kaioken god Kai on his knuckles was sweeping through frequencies like a frantic radio dial. High pitch, low pitch, dense, fluid, sharp, and soft, cycling 10,000 times in the span of a single millimeter of travel. Wise's eyes widened by a fraction of a millimeter, a rare, genuine reaction of surprise from the angel. Faced with an attack that carried every frequency simultaneously, Wise couldn't simply shift his mental state to a single defensive tone, nor could he rely on simple spatial avoidance. The broad-spectrum energy was filling every probabilistic gap in the immediate space. For the first time in months of training, Wise backed up. Wise took a single, swift floating step backward, sweeping his long wooden staff up in front of his chest to execute a formal, high-level angelic parry. Clang shatter. Goku's fist struck the shaft of Wise's staff full-on. The impact produced a deafening, crystalline shockwave that blew the floating silver tea tray to pieces and sent a mile-wide ring of red and white light, expanding across the skies of Lord Beerus's planet. The force of the collision drove Wise's floating boots back 2 inches across the marble floor, a physical displacement so minor it was almost invisible. But to Vegeta, who was watching with wide, stunned eyes, it was an absolute earthquake. He pushed Wise back. Vegeta gasped, his breath catching in his throat. Inside the center of the shockwave, Goku's Kaioken aura flickered violently. The intense, agonizing feedback of maintaining a multi-frequency sweep while striking an angel's staff proved too much for his physical frame to endure. Crack! Goku's right forearm fractured under the sheer, ungodly tension. God, Olaf! Goku screamed through gritted teeth as the Kaioken state collapsed violently inward, triggering an internal energy backfire that blasted him backward across the courtyard. Thud! Goku slammed onto his back, rolling 4 times before coming to a stop near the edge of the arena, his right arm limp, his gi torn to shreds, his chest heaving in ragged, desperate gasps of pain. Wise stood in the center of the clearing, lowering his wooden staff. He looked down at the smooth wood of his staff, where a faint, microscopic smudge of red singe mark rested right in the center. W. His raised his head, a warm, immensely proud smile spreading across his face as he looked at the battered, bleeding Saiyan lying in the dust. Remarkable Goku, Wise said softly, his melodic voice carrying across the quiet courtyard. To force a multi-frequency harmonic sweep using the Kaioken, a truly barbaric, brilliant, and completely insane solution. Goku lay on his back, staring up at the pastel twilight sky of the divine realm. Every muscle in his body felt like it was being scorched by liquid fire, his broken arm throbbing with unbearable agony. Yet through the blood and sweat staining his face, Son Goku let out a loud, hearty, triumphant laugh that echoed all the way to the floating mountain ranges. Ha ha ha, man, Goku wheezed, his dark eyes shining with pure joy. I actually touched it. The threshold of divine synthesis. The pale lilac twilight of Lord Beerus's world hung suspended above the training grounds, unmoving and eternal. Deep beneath the white marble courtyard, the tectonic roots of the cosmic continent hummed with a strange, harmonic vibration. The singe mark Goku had left on Wise's staff during his chaotic Kaioken sweep was gone, wiped clean by the angel's casual touch, but the memory of that microscopic displacement hung heavy over the arena. For 3 days following the strike, Goku had remained submerged in the warm, glowing waters of the divine healing spring tucked behind Beerus's castle. His shattered forearm had reknit under the combination of divine mineral waters and his own relentless Saiyan recovery rate, the bone density returning thicker, harder, and far more receptive to high-frequency energy flow. Now he stood in the center of the courtyard beside Vegeta. Neither warrior wore their gi tops. They stood shirtless in the cool evening air, their upper bodies etched with the battle-tested scars of a lifetime of multiversal warfare. Sweat glistened on Goku's back, trickling down the thick muscles surrounding his spine as he focused entirely on the internal circulation of his Kai. 10 yards away, Lord Beerus sat perched atop a floating stone pedestal, his long purple ears twitching as he gnawed on a grilled alien fish skewer. His golden eyes were sharp, unblinking, and unusually focused. Beside him, Wise leaned lazily on his staff, his smile serene as always, though his violet pupils tracked the subtle microcurrents of energy swirling around the two Saiyans. "They are no longer trying to force the energy outward, my lord," Wise remarked softly, his voice barely audible over the crackle of Beerus's small cooking fire. "HMPH," Beerus grunted, wiping a smear of sauce from his chin with the back of his clawed hand. "Goku proved he could hit your staff by throwing a chaotic tantrum with the Kaioken, but that's a suicide trick. If he tries that multi-frequency sweep in a real battle against a high-tier god, his heart will explode before his fist even makes contact." "Indeed," Wise agreed, tapping his staff against the marble floor. "Tink. A storm hits everything, but it wastes 99% of its power on the empty air. What they are attempting now is far more difficult. They are trying to compress that entire spectrum of vibrational frequencies into the singular, refined state of their ultimate forms." Beerus's dark pupils narrowed into thin slits. "Ultra instinct and ultra ego, tuned to spatial resonance. That isn't just martial arts, Wise. That's altering the fundamental footprint of their souls." Section II, the convergence of silver and purple. In the center of the arena, Goku and Vegeta took 2 synchronous steps backward, creating 30 feet of open space between them. "You ready for this, Vegeta?" Goku asked quietly, his dark eyes fixed on his rival. His voice carried no bravado, no competitive taunting, only the quiet, absolute clarity of a master stepping onto a high wire. "Don't address me as if I need your encouragement, Kakarot," Vegeta sneered, his voice a low, gravelly growl. "You used a brute force Kaioken gamble to graze Wise's staff. It was messy, crude, and pathetic. I am going to execute the frequency alignment properly." Vegeta dropped his center of gravity. He didn't extend his hands into his classic prince's stance. He pulled his elbows inward, locking his jaw, his chest expanding as he drew in a deep, agonizing breath of the dense, divine air. WOSH. A terrifying, suffocating aura of deep, fiery purple ignited around Vegeta's body. The temperature in the courtyard plummeted into a strange, stagnant cold. The ambient light turned bruised and dark as Ultra Ego flared to life. Vegeta's eyebrows vanished, his brow heavy and prominent, his eyes glowing with a ruthless, primal magenta light. The aura surrounding him didn't sparkle or flash with electricity, it bubbled like boiling pitch, thick with the scent of pure destruction. Opposite him, Goku closed his eyes. He didn't scream, he didn't flare his muscles, or force his energy to spike. He let out a long, slow breath through his nose, releasing every trace of tension, pride, and conscious strategy. WOSH. A brilliant, starlit silver aura erupted around Goku in a quiet, majestic wave. Mastered Ultra Instinct. His dark hair lifted, turning a pristine, shimmering silver white. His pupils shifted to cold, pristine silver orbs that reflected the lilac sky above. The silver heat radiating from his body was absolute, serene, and perfectly still. The contrast in the courtyard was staggering. On one side stood Vegeta, a towering inferno of active, consuming destruction that sought to absorb every strike and turn it into raw power. On the other side stood Goku, a pristine ocean of autonomous harmony that sought to phase through space and exist without friction. "Now," Wise murmured, stepping forward slightly, his staff glowing with a faint white light to shield Beerus's cooking fire from the mounting pressure. "Let us see if oil and water can learn to sing the same note." Section III, the Dragon's Pulse. The 2 ultimate forms didn't immediately clash. Instead of charging across the arena at supersonic speeds, Goku and Vegeta began to tune. Vegeta focused his Ultra Ego aura inward. Standard Destruction Kai was meant to obliterate matter on contact, reducing physical atomic structures to absolute zero. But Vegeta was now attempting to take that destructive property and vibrate it. He tuned the dark purple aura until its frequency matched the volatile, chaotic resonance of a tearing spatial rift. turning his destruction Kai into an ethereal, spatial saw that could cut through non-physical magic barriers. Across from him, Goku took the serene, instinctual flow of Ultra Instinct and began to modulate it. Instead of allowing his silver aura to sit in a single, passive defensive state, he used the spatial lessons from the mirror dimension to expand his awareness outward, tuning his silver energy to match the exact, violent frequency Vegeta was generating. Pings, pings, ping. A strange, melodic ringing began to vibrate through the air between them. It was not a sound created by physical contact. The two Saiyans were 30 feet apart, neither moving a muscle, yet the air between them was beginning to fracture. Where the silver aura of Ultra Instinct met the purple flames of Ultra Ego, the space didn't explode, it harmonized. The two opposing energies, rather than destroying one another, locked into a hyperdense, spinning vortex of silver and magenta light. A massive, golden silhouette began to take shape above the courtyard, not formed by magic or summoned by dragon balls, but manifested purely by the divine friction of their synchronized god Kai. It was the ethereal head of a giant, ancient dragon, its golden scales gleaming in the twilight, its crimson eyes opening slowly as the two Saiyans brought their ultimate transformations into perfect, resonant balance. The dragon's resonance? Beerus whispered, dropping his fish skewer completely, his ears pinned back against his head in genuine astonishment. They're using the friction between Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego to create a localized spatial anchor. They aren't just fighting each other, my lord, Wise smiled, his violet eyes wide with deep admiration. They are using one another as tuning forks. Vegeta provides the destructive spatial frequency, and Goku provides the frictionless conduit to guide it. Vegeta's eyes burned with fierce magenta fire as he looked through the golden dragon's aura at his rival. Kakarot, Vegeta roared, his voice echoing with the combined weight of the entire Saiyan race. Don't you dare let your frequency drop, hold the line. Goku's silver pupils flared, a quiet, fearless smirk cutting through the absolute calm of his Ultra Instinct state. I won't drop it, Vegeta, Goku's voice echoed with dual-toned divine resonance. Let me see what your destruction can really do. The two Saiyans surged forward simultaneously, entering the center of the dragon's vortex. The invitation of destruction. The gold and magenta dragon head hovered in the stratosphere above the white marble courtyard, its ethereal, golden-scaled neck coiled around the central axis of the two Saiyans' aura fields. The ambient pressure was no longer just heavy. It had turned non-Euclidean. The grass around the arena didn't bend. It shifted sideways, while the floating hourglass mountains above Lord Beerus's castle began to lock in place, held rigid by the spatial anchor Goku and Vegeta had forged. Vegeta stood in his Ultra Ego state, his body wrapped in dense, boiling purple pitch that hummed at the exact frequency of a spatial tearing field. Opposite him, Goku's mastered Ultra Instinct silver aura vibrated in complete, fluid harmony with Vegeta's destruction frequency, guiding the violent spatial friction through his own frictionless conduit. Lord Beerus slowly stood up from his floating ped. Estel. He tossed the half-eaten fish skewer aside. It didn't fall to the ground. The moment it entered the outer radius of the dragon's resonance, the skewer dissolved into microscopic purple dust, erased by the sheer ambient vibrational pressure. Wise, Beerus said, his voice dropping an octave into a low, terrifying purr that made the air in the divine realm turn to ice. Step back. My lord, Wise tilted his head, though he made no move to argue. He gracefully floated back 50 yards, tapping his staff once to cast an absolute, high-level angelic barrier over his tea-set and floating chair. Beerus stepped off his pedestal, his bare purple feet making no sound as they touched the marble floor. He didn't transform. Gods of destruction had no need for transformations, but the purple Hakai aura that ignited around his frame was fundamentally different from Vegeta's. Vegeta's Ultra Ego was a burning, wild fire fueled by combat spirit. Beerus's Hakai was the quiet, absolute, cold reality of the universe's eventual end. You two spent 3 days learning how to tune your energy to magic walls, mirror realms, and Wise's staff, Beerus said, strolling casually toward the center of the dragon's vortex. His golden eyes locked onto Goku, then flicked to Vegeta. You think you can bypass a god of destruction's defense by turning your Kai into a spatial saw? Beerus stopped 10 feet from the glowing golden dragon's core, spreading his arms wide, his long tail flicking lazily behind him. Show me, Beerus commanded, a cold, terrifying smirk spreading across his feline face. Hit me with that dragon. Section V, the clash of absolute principles. Goku and Vegeta didn't exchange words. In their current synchronized state, words were an unnecessary lag on their reaction time. WOSH. They moved as a single, dual-toned entity. Vegeta surged forward from the left, his ultra-ego fist pulled back, carrying the dense, spatial-tearing destruction frequency. Goku moved from the right, his mastered ultra-instinct palm extended, carrying the fluid, frictionless conduit to slip past physical mass. As they struck, the giant golden dragon above them roared, a sound that echoed not through the air, but through the subspatial fabric of the entire seventh universe. Roared. The combined strike, a double thrust of Ultra Instinct Silver and Ultra Ego Purple, anchored by the golden dragon's spatial jaw, aimed directly for the center of Lord Beerus's chest. Beerus didn't dodge, he didn't phase shift. He raised his right palm, opening his clawed fingers, and caught the full weight of the dragon's resonance directly in his hand. Ting boom! The collision produced a sound unlike any explosion standard universe physics could create. There was no fiery mushroom cloud. There was no roaring shockwave that shattered the continent. Instead, a ring of pure inverted black light expanded outward from Beerus's palm for 5 miles in every direction. Where the black light passed, space itself turned transparent. Goku, Vegeta, and Beerus were briefly visible standing in the middle of a clear, glass-like void, surrounded by the raw, unpainted geometry of the multiverse. Gah! Vegeta's teeth ground together, his purple ultra-ego eyes bulging with immense physical strain as he pushed his destruction frequency to its absolute, ungodly limit. He's holding the spatial saw with his bare skin. He's not holding it, Vegeta, Goku called out, his silver ultra-instinct pupils tracking the micro-vibrations in Beerus's hand. He's matching our pitch. He tuned his Hakai to our exact frequency the second we made contact. Beerus looked down at his right palm. The combined silver and purple energy of the dragon's resonance was vibrating at millions of cycles per second against his skin, trying to slide past his outer physical layer and reach his vital core. But Beerus's own divine energy wasn't a static wall. It was a master-level active destruction field that was constantly absorbing, neutralizing, and retuning the incoming spatial frequency in real time. Not bad, Beerus admitted, his smirk widening into a feral, razor-sharp grin. You actually managed to penetrate 3 millimeters into my outer Hakai barrier. That's 3 millimeters further than anyone else in this universe has gotten in 5 million years. Beerus's golden eyes flashed with a blinding purple light. Now, let me show you what happens when the frequency strikes back. Section VI, the shattered mirror of a god. Beerus didn't punch back. He simply closed his fist. Crunch! Beerus crushed the golden dragon's core inside his palm. The sudden, violent collapse of the spatial anchor generated a massive, short-circuiting spiritual feedback loop. The spatial-tearing frequency Vegeta had built, combined with the frictionless conduit Goku was holding, broke apart simultaneously. Boom! The reflected feedback hit Goku and Vegeta right in their chests. Guah! Both Saiyan screamed as their ultimate transformations were forcefully stripped away. Goku's silver hair snapped back to dark black, and Vegeta's purple ultra-ego aura shattered into dying violet embers. They were launched backward across the white marble courtyard like twin cannonballs, tumbling 500 yards before slamming back first into the base of Beerus's treehouse castle. Crash thud! The stone wall crumbled over them, burying both warriors in a heap of white dust and purple stone rubble. Silence returned to the divine realm. The black transparent ring fading from the sky revealed the peaceful, pastel lilac twilight once again. The floating hourglass mountains settled back into their natural, slow rotation. Beerus lowered his hand, blowing a small trail of purple steam from his clawed fingers. He dusted off his gold armbands, turning his head toward Wise. "How was that?" Beerus asked, smirking. "Did I hold back enough?" "Excellently done, my lord," Wise smiled, floating over and waving his staff to restore the broken castle wall and clear the rubble. "You allowed them to test the structural integrity of their spatial anchor without accidentally incinerating their souls." From the pile of cleared rubble, two battered, bruised, and completely exhausted Saiyans slowly pushed themselves up. Goku sat in the dirt, his upper body covered in purple bruises, his torn pants hanging in rags around his boots. He wiped a streak of blood from his forehead, looking over at Vegeta, who was lying flat on his back, glaring at the sky with furious, unyielding dark eyes. "Man," Goku wheezed, letting out a loud, breathless laugh despite the agonizing pain in his ribs. "Lord Beerus is crazy strong." Vegeta pushed himself up onto his elbows, spitting a drop of blood onto the marble. "Shut up, Kakarot. We held the anchor for 3 seconds against a god of destruction." "Yeah," Goku grinned, looking at his gloved, trembling hands, then up at the tranquil sky of the god's realm. 3 seconds. Next time we'll hold it for 10. The Echo in West City. The sky above West City was painted in the soft pastel pinks and golds of early dusk, but the atmosphere hung thick with an unnatural, metallic chill. 3 days had passed since Goku and Vegeta's clash against Lord Beerus on the god of destruction's world. While the two Saiyans had been recovering under Wise's care, the subtle spatial trauma from Goku's initial exit out of the mirror dimension had not entirely settled. Deep beneath the quantum bedrock of Earth, the lingering stress lines had drifted across the tectonic grid, drawn like a needle to a magnet by the massive, concentrated technological and electrical emissions radiating from the heart of Capsule Corp. Bulma stood on the balcony of her top-floor laboratory, holding a digital scanner in her right hand. Her blue hair was blown back by an erratic, cold draft that seemed to originate from nowhere in particular. "This doesn't make any sense," Bulma muttered, tapping the screen aggressively. "The atmospheric density is dropping, but the barometric pressure is rising. It's like space itself is getting thinner." Beside her, Trunks looked up at the sky above the main dome of Capsule Corp. 100 feet in the air, a faint, shimmering prismatic distortion was visible. A single hairline fracture in the atmosphere that looked like a thin scratch on a glass window pane. But unlike a normal sky halo, the light passing through the scratch didn't show the clouds or the setting sun. It showed a silent, swirling vortex of dark obsidian mirrors. Tink, tink, crack. The scratch broadened. A high-pitched, crystalline hum resonated through the concrete foundation of the Capsule Corp complex, setting off car alarms for blocks around and shattering every glass window on the western face of the main tower. "Mom," Trunks yelled, stepping in front of Bulma as his aura flared into a subtle golden shield. "The spatial sensor isn't glitching. Something is pushing through from the other side." Before the warning could leave his lips, the hairline fracture split wide open. A 300-foot tear in reality erupted directly above the Capsule Corp courtyard. The tear didn't explode with fire or smoke. It opened like a giant, gaping mouth of dark, non-Euclidean geometry, pulling the surrounding air, magnetic fields, and gravity vectors into a violent, hyperdense spatial drain. Trees were uprooted, turning into fine green dust as they were sucked upward into the rift. The massive steel roof of the main research building groaned, its bolts snapping like dry twigs as the rising gravity vacuum began to peel the structure apart. "Trunks, hold the building!" Bulma screamed, clutching her terminal as the floor tilted beneath her heels. "I can't stop the gravity, Mom!" Trunks shouted, flying upward and extending both hands to unleash a massive golden Kai barrier over the collapsing research dome. "It's eating the energy." The barrier is just giving it more weight to pull. Section II, the return of the Saiyan. Pop. A brilliant flash of white divine light ignited in the air directly between the expanding sky rift and the collapsing capsule corp tower. The light cleared instantly, revealing Son Goku and Vegeta. Goku wore a fresh, immaculate orange turtle school gi, the black kanji crisp against his chest. His body was fully healed, his dark hair swaying lightly in the violent upward gale generated by the spatial drain. Beside him, Vegeta landed on the edge of the balcony railing, his dark blue jumpsuit intact, his dark eyes taking in the chaos in a fraction of a millisecond. Kakarot, Vegeta growled, his boots digging into the metal railing as he felt the spatial pressure. The rift anchored itself to your family's technology. The energy output of the Capsule Corp reactors is feeding the spatial stress line. I see it, Goku called out over the deafening, silent roar of the void. Goku looked up at the gaping 300-foot tier. At the center of the dark obsidian vortex, the core of the mirror dimension was attempting to reset its sector. And to do that, it was attempting to drag the entire metropolitan area of West City into its subspatial layer. Goku, Bulma yelled from the balcony door, holding onto Trunks' arm. Shut that thing down. It's pulling the entire city's power grid into the void. If the main fusion reactor collapses into the tier, the whole continent will fold. Goku looked over his shoulder with a warm, calm smile, his dark pupils steady despite the roaring vortex above. Don't worry, Bulma, Goku said, his voice carrying effortlessly over the spatial storm. Vegeta and I learned a few new songs while we were away. Vegeta stepped off the railing, floating beside Goku in midair. He didn't drop into a wide, destructive stance. His expression was cool, disciplined, and razor-sharp. We don't use brute force on this one, Kakarot, Vegeta grunted, pulling his elbows inward. We use the dragon's resonance. We tune the rift to absolute zero and lock the door for good. Right, Goku nodded, his posture becoming completely relaxed and fluid. Let's show this mirror place that Earth isn't inside its box anymore. Section III, the final harmony. The two Saiyans didn't hesitate. They didn't build up through Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3, or God. They tapped directly into the pinnacle of their divine training. WOSH. On the left, Vegeta's body erupted into the dark, boiling, terrifying purple flames of Ultra Ego. The Destruction Kai flared, instantly tuned to the exact, volatile spatial-tearing frequency they had perfected on Beerus's world. WOSH. On the right, Goku's frame ignited in the pristine, starlit silver heat of mastered Ultra Instinct. His silver pupils opened, his fluid, frictionless aura expanding to guide Vegeta's destructive frequency into a singular, harmonious vector. Resonance, they roared together, their dual-toned voices echoing across the entire sky of West City. Ping, ping, boom. The giant, golden-scaled head of the ethereal dragon manifested once again, coiling around the 300-foot sky tier. This time, Goku and Vegeta weren't using the dragon's resonance to strike an opponent or test a god of destruction. They were using it as a universal tuning fork. Vegeta injected his spatial-tearing destruction frequency into the edges of the dark mirror rift, cutting the anchor lines holding the tier to Capsule Corp's reactors. Simultaneously, Goku guided the silver, frictionless energy of Ultra Instinct through the center of the tier, matching the internal vibrational geometry of the mirror dimension. Roared. The golden dragon above West City opened its massive jaws and closed them directly over the spatial tier. The 300-foot gaping mouth of dark obsidian mirrors stopped pulling. The rising gravity vacuum vanished instantly. The trees, steel plates, and dust suspended in midair dropped softly back to the earth. Now, Vegeta, Goku called out, his silver aura glowing with absolute serene light. Lock the frequency. Ha, Vegeta barked, driving his purple-infused palm forward into the center of the golden dragon's snout. The combined silver and purple energy hit the spatial tier at the absolute zero harmonic point. Crack shatter. The entire 300-foot dark glass tier didn't collapse or explode. It shattered like thin, frozen ice. Millions of sparkling, weightless silver and gold crystals rained down over West City, dissolving into harmless, warm sunlight before they even touched the rooftops. The sky above Capsule Corp returned to a pristine, clear, golden evening. The air was warm, sweet, and still. The mirror dimension was officially, permanently sealed. The dust settles. The glittering shower of silver and gold crystals dissolved into the warm afternoon air, leaving behind no trace of the spatial tier. Below the pristine sky, the Capsule Corp Co. Earthyard lay quiet. The heavy hum of the reactors returned to its normal, rhythmic purr, and the cold, unnatural draft that had chilled West City was replaced by a gentle, summer breeze carrying the faint scent of ocean salt from the nearby bay. Goku dropped out of mastered Ultra Instinct, his silver hair returning to its familiar, messy black spikes. He exhaled a long, warm cloud of steam, stretching his arms high over his head until his shoulders popped with a satisfying clack. Beside him, Vegeta powered down from Ultra Ego, wiping a thin sheen of sweat from his brow and crossing his arms tightly over his chest. Trunks flew down from the balcony, landing lightly beside his mother. Bulma stepped forward, her eyes wide as she looked up at the completely clear sky, then down at the two Saiyans. Is it really gone? Bulma asked, checking her handheld scanner one last time. The screen showed perfectly flat, normal spatial readings across all frequencies. No residual spatial distortions, no dimensional bleed-through. It's completely sealed, Bulma, Goku said, turning around with his classic broad grin. Vegeta and I locked the frequency from the outside. That mirror realm won't be snapping open around Earth ever again. HMPH, Vegeta grunted, adjusting the cuffs of his gloves. The dimension was a minor nuisance. If Kakarot hadn't dragged his feet inside it for hours on the first day, we would have resolved this before my lunch was cold. Hey, I was figuring out how the physics worked, Goku laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. Besides, if I hadn't gotten trapped, we wouldn't have learned how to tune our god Kai with magic principles. We wouldn't even have the dragon's resonance. Bulma looked between the two of them, sighing with a mixture of exasperation and relief. Well, whatever ridiculous new trick you two picked up, I'm just glad my laboratory is still attached to the ground. Now clear out of the courtyard. The repair droids have a lot of concrete to patch. Section V, a feast worthy of gods. By evening, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky over West City in deep violet and indigo. The upper garden terrace of Capsule Corp was illuminated by soft, warm string lights, and a massive banquet table stretched across the lawn, laden with mountain-high platters of roasted meats, seared fish, steaming bowls of rice, and trays of delicate pastries. Goku and Vegeta sat opposite each other, operating at their usual terrifying industrial dining speed. Bowls were emptied in seconds, bone piles grew like small monuments beside their plates, and the serving staff moved in a synchronized, hurried rotation just to keep pace. Sitting at the head of the table, Dr. Strange, who had arrived via a brief, sparkling sling ring portal after sensing the final stabilization of the dimensional grid, sat quietly sipping a cup of Earl Grey tea. He watched the two Saiyans consume enough calories to feed a small nation with a mixture of quiet amusement and mild medical disbelief. Fascinating, Strange remarked, setting his teacup down on its saucer with a delicate clink. Their metabolic rate during recovery operates on a scale that defies standard biological conservation of energy. Oh, that's just normal for them after a big fight, Gohan smiled, sitting nearby with Videl and Pan. If Dad doesn't eat at least his body weight in protein after using God Kai, his muscles take twice as long to mend. Goku swallowed a massive mouthful of roasted roast beef, wiping his chin with his forearm before looking over at the sorcerer. Man, Dr. Strange, Goku beamed. You really gotta try this glazed rib. It's way better than whatever dusty old tea you're drinking. I am quite content with my tea, Goku, Strange replied with a dry smirk, his sharp gray eyes scanning both Goku and Vegeta. Though I must congratulate you both. The spatial readings I recorded from the sanctum during your final maneuver were Remarkable. You didn't just force the rift shut, you harmonized the localized reality matrix. Vegeta paused mid-bite, setting his meat bone down with deliberate precision. He looked across the table at the sorcerer. "We adapted," Vegeta stated coolly. "Your magic principles were inefficient, wizard. They relied too heavily on geometric incantations. By translating the underlying vibrational concepts directly into God Kai, we eliminated the need for spellcasting entirely." "A pragmatic interpretation," Strange acknowledged, inclining his head slightly. "Magic is simply the language of the universe. You two merely decided to speak it with your fists instead of your tongues." Section VI, The Unbroken Horizon. Later that night, long after the feast had concluded and the guests had dispersed, Goku stood alone on the edge of the Capsule Corp roof, looking out over the glowing lights of West City. The night air was cool and crisp. High above, the moon shone bright and full, casting a soft silver L. Eyed over the quiet streets. There were no glass reflections in the sky, no non-Euclidean angles, no spatial monsters waiting in the dark. The universe was whole, peaceful, and vast. A quiet step sounded behind him on the metal roof. Vegeta walked up, stopping a few feet away, leaning his shoulder against a structural beam with his arms crossed over his chest. "You're quiet, Kakarot?" Vegeta grunted, not looking at his rival, his dark eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "Thinking about Lord Beerus." "A little bit," Goku admitted softly, a gentle, thoughtful smile resting on his face. "When Lord Beerus caught our dragon's resonance with his bare hand. Man, he didn't even sweat. We learned a whole new way to use our energy, and he just tuned right into it like it was nothing. He's a god of destruction who has lived for millions of years," Vegeta said, his voice dropping into a hard, unyielding register. "Did you expect him to fall over because we learned a trick from a wizard?" "Nah," Goku chuckled, looking up at the endless sea of stars above them. "That's what makes it so great. No matter how strong we get, no matter how many crazy dimensions we get thrown into, there's always somebody higher up. There's always a new ceiling to break." Goku dropped into a loose, comfortable stance, extending his right hand and looking at his palm. With a soft, microscopic ping, a tiny, perfect drop of crimson Super Saiyan God Kai ignited on his index finger, vibrating so quietly, so harmoniously, that it didn't even disturb the night air around his hand. Vegeta watched the tiny flame of energy, his own dark eyes reflecting the crimson glow. A slow, ruthless, familiar smirk spread across the prince's face. "Get some rest, Kakarot." Vegeta turned on his heel, walking back toward the access stairs. "Tomorrow morning at dawn, we're going back to Beerus's planet, and this time, we aren't stopping at 3 seconds. Goku closed his hand, snuffing out the tiny crimson flame, his heart beating with the wild, eternal rhythm of the Saiyan race. "Yeah," Goku smiled into the quiet night. "Tomorrow,